With that, I'll go ahead and call our work session to order. I'll start off with a review of tonight's City Council meeting agenda, and I'll pause briefly after each topic in case there's any questions or anything that Council wants to work out with staff going into tonight's meeting.
Excuse me, Mayor, I am here. I can hear you all. I'm just almost home, and I'll be on screen in a few minutes, but I'm listening to it.
Hey, totally fine, just as long as it's on your end, Counselor. No problem at all. We'll see you soon. All right, so then we'll go to changes to the agenda. Is there any proposed changes to the agenda tonight? Okay, then we'll go to public comment. And then we'll go to response to the previous week's public comments. Jordan, I don't believe there is any response to any previous comments, is there?
Not from me, Mayor. There was a statement last week or 2 weeks ago, but not a question. I think it was a statement to the City Council.
Thank you. With that, we'll then go to proclamations, National Pollinator Week. We'll then, under presentations, we have 2 police officers to give their oath of office tonight that we're looking forward to, Officer Sabella and Santos. We'll then go to our consent agenda, which has our City Council meeting minutes for April 29th. Is there any questions or remarks on our City Council minutes? All right, under ordinances, public hearing under for HB 2001. Under resolutions, resolution 2021-11 for B City USA. No, I'm not going to be wearing a bee costume for that. Under new business, public hearing, appeal of land use file 20-049, which is Creekside Loop garage setback adjustment. It's the second appeal. All right, we'll then go to our report from Jordan, our city manager, and then counselor and committee reports, and then we'll have an executive session at the end of tonight's council meeting. With that, on tonight's agenda for our city council work session is our water master plan update and presentation on the Portland Water Bureau supply options. Jordan, are you wanting to kick us off with that?
Yeah, and I'll introduce Mike Walker so we can introduce Brian and kind of run down tonight's work session. There's a lot to actually cover in just this hour, so I think we want to just jump right into it. We're going to be talking about the Water Master Plan and the Portland Water Bureau supply options and some of the work that Brian and his team at Murray Smith have been doing to look at our options in regards to that project. And then we have a couple other presentations too that will be in front of you during this work session. Mike, do you want to go ahead and do the introductions?
Yeah, so we've got, I think, we'll start off with a 30 minutes from Murray Smith to go over the Water Master Plan update and their analysis and review to date of the options for the Portland Water Bureau supply. And then we'll have 15 minutes for some representatives from the Cottrell Community Planning Organization, and followed up by 15 minutes from Portland Water Bureau. We have David Peters, who's the program director for the Bull Run Treatment Project, and Cecilia Hune, who's the finance director for the Water Bureau. And so if we could get the presentation up on screen, then Brian's going to kind of go over the overview of the presentation and some of the bullet points. And then we'll...
Just one moment.
And Lauren Corder, right, is the representative from the Cottrell, and she is here. I think I saw her log in there. Thanks for being here tonight. Point that out. But yeah, it looks like everything's up. And
yeah, Jeff, if we could start with the next slide, one with the bullet points. Brian will kind of go over the overview of the presentation.
Excellent, thanks, Mike. And again, I'm Brian Ginter with Murray Smith, the project manager for the city's Water Master Plan. So tonight we'll cover a quick overview of the city's historical water supply sources, investigations that have been completed in the past, and kind of the progress to the development of your current water supply, and then kind of skip over and talk about the purpose of the master plan, where we are in the process, and then really dig into the meat of tonight's presentation, which is the water supply analysis, talk a bit about next steps, and then leave some time for questions and comments at the end. Next slide.
Yeah, this is just kind of an overview map of where the city's existing water sources are. You can see the river, and we go as far east as the Salmon River. We have a permit to withdraw water from the Salmon River that has been extended to 2069. We have a current water right on Brownell Springs and rights on Alder Creek, where the city's treatment plant is, as well as a wholesale water supply agreement with the City of Portland Water Bureau. And that's located near the intersection of Hudson Road and Wested Road. You get the next slide. So this is just some background on how we kind of got to where we are today. When the city was looking at some long-term water supply issues, we investigated the Sandy River as a source, as well as the Salmon River, where we have an existing permit to withdraw water. And some of the issues with this that led us to eliminate the Sandy River from further study were significant capital cost, challenging water quality conditions. There's a lot of variability in the river, especially in the summer when the demand for potable water be greatest. Sometimes, especially in the hottest part of the summer, when you'll have a lot of glacial flow in the river, that's very difficult to treat with conventional treatment facilities and with membrane facilities as well. And then also any withdrawal from the Sandy River would be subject to fish persistence requirements from the Oregon Water Resources Department. We also looked at groundwater, both groundwater associated with alluvial aquifers in river valleys. And we looked at both the Sandy and the Salmon. There were similar treatment costs and challenges on the Salmon River as there were with the Sandy River. And we were running into the same fish persistence requirements. And basically, we got an extension of our water rights, 2006, of our water permit to 2069. But the fish persistence requirements in that extension prohibit withdrawal from the salmon between August and October, unless the river flows or the main stem of the Sandy are above a certain level, and they rarely, if ever, are above that threshold. So basically, there's no withdrawal from the Salmon River source from August to October, and that's the high demand season. So that currently that isn't a very viable option, as well as the endangered species fish persistence issues. We also looked at groundwater. We looked at some trout-tail formation aquifers that are near Sandy. But most of the area, the groundwater supply near Sandy is either associated with existing surface waters, or it's in the designated groundwater management area, which basically runs from Tickle Creek to the Multnomah County line, west to Deep Creek, Haley Road, and east to, I believe it's the 750 contour level in the Sandy River Canyon. So there's not a lot of there aren't abundant groundwater resources near Sandy, and the resources that are there are designated as they only exempt uses, so we couldn't withdraw water from municipal uses. And then so that led us to enter into an agreement with the Portland Water Bureau. In 2008, we have a 20-year wholesale water supply agreement, and the city invested about $13 million in 2012, 2013 to build a pipeline, a couple of pump stations, and a water reservoir. So purpose tonight, in addition to the overview of the master plan, is to kind of go over the options we have with the Portland Water Bureau wholesale supply source. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
Mike, can we ask questions, as we go along, or do you want us to hold them to the end?
Yeah, if we have, simple questions that we can answer real quickly, that'd be fine. But anything really detailed, we'd probably like to hold until the council sees this again
Okay.
in June.
All right. Yeah. Just real quickly, I have some concerns that we didn't investigate some of these groundwater wells that we may be able to use as an alternative to the Portland Water Bureau. Not too happy with the Portland Water Bureau supply at this time. So, but if you want to talk about those later on, I can sure bring them up at a future time.
Yeah, we can provide some more information on the extent of the investigations we did into groundwater sources in 2007.
Okay, thanks. I'll look forward to those.
Next slide. So I'll just start by kind of talking about why we prepare our water master plan. So the first and least exciting reason is you're required to do it by state law. So OAR 333-061 requires all water utilities to maintain a current water master plan that's governed by the Oregon Health Authority's Drinking Water Services. They define current as having a 20-year planning horizon. Your last water system master plan was completed in 1999. So we're into the next 20-year planning horizon, and it's time to do an update. For me, the more exciting reason is it gives us a chance to take a look at your short and long-term needs. The city's grown quite a bit since 1999. A lot has changed, and so it's really time to take a look at what are the needs of the water system in this current context. And really, what I like to say is that the Water Master Plan ultimately serves as a roadmap for system improvements. It should guide how you make investments in your water system over the next 20 years if we do it right. It lays the groundwork for where do you need to spend money, where do you need to make improvements, where do you need to provide capacity for the future growth of the city. Next slide. So the master plan is organized in a way to kind of tell a story. So it starts out with what is the water system? So that's the existing description of existing facilities. And we look at what are we planning for? So we look at what are the water needs or the water demands in the system today and in the future at that 20-year timeline. And a lot of times we look well beyond 20 years. We're going to put water infrastructure in the ground that may last 100 years. We want to make sure we're planning and sizing it for that long-term need. Then we look at, well, how are we doing this planning? So what are our water service goals or our criteria that we're going to use to evaluate the performance of the system? We do analysis and identify deficiencies, come up with solutions. So what are the needs of the system? And then we get to the part that really matters. What is it going to cost? So what are those improvements? When do they need to be completed? What are the costs going to be? And finally, looking at how will you pay for it? How might you finance those improvements? What is the cost impacts to customers? Next slide. So where are we today in the Water Master Plan? So we're developing that water demand forecast now. We're working on developing and updating the hydraulic model that we'll use to analyze the performance of the system. We're deep into this water supply analysis, and that's the focus tonight because that has a timeline right now. So the water supply decision needs to be provided back to the Drinking Water Services by June of 2021. What's the plan to comply with the regulations? And then the overall water system master plan will be back to you later this year as we wrap it up to complete in December. So kind of 2 steps along the way. And the water supply analysis does provide a bit of the framework for how we look at the rest of the system. Next slide. So tonight we'll focus on the water supply analysis. So just some context here. I know this map's pretty small, but the blue line running north out of Sandy up towards the Sandy River is that existing transmission main that you built back in 2010-ish to supply wholesale water from Portland to the city. There's a connection near the intersection of Lusted Road and Hudson Road where that wholesale supply is pumped to the city. With the city's planned development of the water treatment plant located just north and west of there, it's the blue kind of crosshatched property. Your supply connection now will be on the unfinished water or raw water side of the treatment plant, meaning that the water will not have been treated or disinfected yet. And so that does create a situation where you've got a decision to make in terms of what do you do with your long-term wholesale supply. which has prompted this analysis to look at, what is the best way to address that issue. And then next slide. We looked at three.
Brian.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the previous slide? And maybe I missed that, but again, can you just kind of explain again why, if we have the existing line, why we would have to create a duplicate line?
Sure. And so the yellow lines with black outline that run from Bull Run Lake down kind of the Sandy River and then go northwest towards the city of Portland are what they call the conduits. So that's 3 pipelines that bring water from the Bull Run watershed to the city of Portland. And the Sandy's connection there is where the blue line crosses those. So at that location now, the water is currently chlorinated up at the headworks up at Bull Run Reservoir. And so it's essentially drinkable water by the time that it's removed from the pipeline at your connection point. With the change that Portland is making with the new treatment plant, that supply point will now be unfinished water. And so we'll get into it a little further here in a minute, but you really have then 2 options. One is to take that unfinished water and treat it yourselves with a new treatment plant before bringing it to the city, or extending your line up to the treatment plant location in order to get finished water from the city and then continue to be served similarly to how you are now. Is that clear on the answer?
I'll save my questions. I guess, yeah, let me hear more.
Okay.
Thank you. And then Brian, I was going down the same kind of road of questioning. So will the water then that you're saying will need more work, is it just because, and I'm going to mispronounce it with this kryptonite, whatever deal, that is it because isn't being treated for that specifically, or is there additional treatment things that need to be done because this is kind of a new water source we're getting?
So yeah, so cryptosporidium is the contaminant of concern that drives the changes for the Portland Water Bureau, and there's experts from the Water Bureau that can certainly provide more detail about that. And so yes, the water will need to be filtered as part of the long-term to enhanced surface water treatment rule by 2026. That's the agreement that Portland has, and the same conditions would apply to Sandy if they were to take water prior to the treatment. It would need to be treated to the same level.
But that's the only issue with this water, or is the water just completely untreated?
The water will be completely untreated once the treatment plant goes online. So today it's chlorinated at the headworks. There will be no chlorine added until it gets to the treatment plant.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Thank you.
And Brian, real quickly, will you be describing the contract that City of Portland and Sandy have and what that water quality will be supposedly transferred to us during the conversation?
I can speak to that some, and that may also be some of the questions that you may want to have the Water Bureau folks weigh in on potentially. But I will talk about that here a little later.
Okay, I will wait until you talk about it.
Okay, thank you. So we looked at really 3 alternatives. The first 2 around your existing wholesale supply. So either purchasing unfinished water or purchasing finished water from the Water Bureau. And then the third option we looked at, just to make sure that we were panning out and considering what other regional options there were, was to look at the City of Gresham Rockwood Water PUD groundwater supply. All of this with the goal of selecting, again, a path forward in terms of your secondary supply to the city. All of this assumes you will still continue to use your Alder Creek supply as your primary source. Next slide. So we came up with some preliminary selection criteria, knowing that while dollars and cents is a key one, we do want to look at some other elements and make sure we're taking a holistic view. So the first couple are economic life cycle cost, and we looked at a 30-year timeline that kind of aligns with the proposed new wholesale contract with Portland. Initial capital requirements, recognizing that the alternatives may not have the same initial cost implementation risk. operational complexity, resilience and reliability, and then expandability. And I also added, it's not on here, impact of potential future rate increases. And we'll talk about each of these a bit more when we get into the specifics of them. Next slide. So as we looked at the three options, we met with Rockwood and Gresham. We'll talk about that one first to understand where they were in their development and what potential there was. And the simple answer is it was eliminated from further consideration after discussions with them. They're just in the process of developing this supply. There is some uncertainty in terms of the capacity potential just to meet their needs, let alone supplying another partner or a wholesaler. And then just from a distance standpoint, you're talking about pretty significant infrastructure that would be required. Their groundwater supply is primarily being developed on the north end of Gresham. So you can imagine just distance-wise, that's a lot of pipeline, if nothing else, to extend to the city, not to mention participating in supply development. So that left us with the two alternatives. And we met with Water Bureau staff several times, both in terms of technical issues and also looking at the economic analysis. And kind of high level, and we'll get into these a bit more, finished water is going to be more expensive water to purchase, so the unit cost of wholesale water is higher. It does require additional transmission piping and pumping to get from the new water treatment plant to your existing pipeline connection location. And then the other issue that comes up here is that they use a disinfectant, chloramine, so it's a combination of chlorine and ammonia at the water treatment plant, which is different than your disinfectant at your Alder Creek supply, which is just free chlorine. Blending those does create some water quality issues that would have to be addressed. Right now, they use chloraminated water today, but your connection point is located prior to where ammonia is added today, and that changes with the new treatment plant. The unfinished water option, on the contrary, is a lower unit cost of water. It utilizes the existing supply connection infrastructure, so no changes there, but the significant change would be that the city would need to construct treatment somewhere between that connection point and the city to treat the water to the same level to meet regulations.
Brian, so will the water from our Alder Creek supply be treated for chloramented or not?
That's a decision that needs to be dug into further, but ultimately the likely solution would be to add ammonia to that source as well. So it's also chloraminated and you're blending like water.
But unlike the city of Portland, we're not at this point required to.
You're not required to, and actually Portland is not required to add ammonia. That's a water quality and treatment decision that they've made around existing conditions and also what they're planning for the future. It largely has to do with the long-term residual of the disinfectant. There's some other factors as well. They've done a lot of study into which method to use and have decided that chloramines makes the most sense for retail and wholesale customers.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next slide. So we focus first on an economic analysis. I will not run you through all of these numbers because I think the next slide is more interesting, but we did get information from the Water Bureau. We got a 10-year rate forecast from them that's used here. So that reflects the best understanding of what rates could look like for unfinished and finished water over the 10 years. Beyond that, we had to make an assumption. We used 2% average annual increase and used the same for both supplies. I will tell you that is that's a placeholder number in order to do a comparison. Beyond 10 years, there is a lot of uncertainty about rate. O&M costs, the big difference here is that if you construct a new water treatment plant, you've got a pretty significant O&M cost versus if you're buying finished water, it's really limited. It's no change from today. And then the other piece is that with a new treatment plant, you're going to be making routine capital investments in that plant. And so our analysis reflects that versus the finished water option. The capital investment is Portland Water Bureau's primarily, and it's built into your rates.
Can you clarify what the existing numbers are for costs compared to these?
The existing rate is fairly close to the lower number, the unfinished water data. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, I think as of July 1, our wholesale rate will be about 76 cents per 100 cubic feet. That's what we're paying now.
Is that a CCF? Is that 100?
Yes.
So it's twice what it is now, more than twice.
Well, that's 10 years out.
Yeah, correct in both cases. Yep. So this is a 2020 number. So it is an increase to that point. Yes. And again, and I'll say it several times because I want to make sure I hit this point. I mean, this is a forecast. And so, rate forecasts are updated annually. Rates are adopted by the Portland City Council on an annual basis. So, this is the forecast for 2030 based on what we know today. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of things that can impact the rate forecast, and the rate forecast is obviously a significant part of the economic analysis. So I wanted to kind of run through these. So the first is potential new regulations. Any change like what is currently being addressed today with the treatment plant construction will have an impact on rates. Changes in the rate structure will impact the analysis. The wholesale contracts for all the wholesalers expires in, well, for Sandy, it would have been 2028, but in 2026, all of the contracts now are set to expire. The existing contract is not going to be renewed, and so there is current negotiations underway for a new wholesale contract. We're early in that process, so there is a lot of uncertainty around what the terms of that contract will be and what the implications are for rates. So that's a definite big unknown going forward. Based on the preliminary work, it's likely to be a similar rate structure or rate going forward. But again, that's likely. That's not a given at this point. On the city side, changes in demands and supply from Portland will have an impact. If you take more water, obviously the cost of water, the total cost of water is higher, but it can impact the unit price. The cost to do renewal to a city-built water treatment plant and the timing of that is variable, and that cost can have an impact. To build a new treatment plant requires a 3 to 5 acre property, so property acquisition costs are a big unknown going on right now. And then the last one is how you fund the capital that needs to be invested in these projects in the early years. There's obviously costs associated with financing that can have a big impact. So I really want to say is this economic analysis does have a lot of uncertainty in it, and it really is intended for comparison of the two alternatives. Many of these variables are going to be impact both similarly, but there's some that don't. So there's some uncertainty there.
So just to clarify, the $1.528, is that a rate that includes the cost of this water treatment plant that we have to build for it?
So looking at those two numbers, so the 1.528 is just the purchase cost if you selected the unfinished water option. So that is the cost paid to Portland to buy unfinished water. Then the treatment plant would have a capital cost component.
Right, which would raise the rates and the cost of delivering that. So I think it's important for us to be able to kind of compare apples to apples.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's something I'd be looking for in the future, is kind of getting that clarified, and I guess it's probably a crapshoot as to, what's a water treatment plant going to cost, but.
So we have tried to capture all of that in here. So I'm sorry, this economic analysis includes the cost of purchasing water, the capital costs associated with any infrastructure in both options, as well as the O&M costs in both options. So it is essentially an apples to apples comparison that does cover all of the costs associated with the water.
So, and this question may be for Mike, I'm not sure, but the staff report discusses some of the early investments that we made to put pipe as well as plan out some treatment facilities, pump stations and stuff several years ago to get ready for this project. And of course, typical Portland, they moved the goalpost on us. But have we done budgetary planning for some of these treatment centers and stuff coming up? Like, because it feels like we've known that we would possibly have to treat this water. That was kind of the plan, right? That's why we laid the pipe. So have we made any headway in capital construction or anything for any of this?
No, the agreement that both the city and both Sandy and the city of Portland have with the Oregon Health Authority requires us to either connect to a finished water source or treat the water we buy from Portland by 2027. That agreement, the term of that agreement started in 2017. And so that's when we started the process of, updating the water master plan, starting to look into some of these costs. And when we started looking into, we got more information on what the treated water costs would be from City of Portland at that time. That's when we said we need to look at other options other than just buying treated water from Portland. And that's where we're at now.
Right, but
4 years later, we have half a plan. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and my understanding is from the report, some of these facilities though have the capacity to do 10,000 gallons a day, or I don't know if I have the matrix right. And currently they're doing 4,000 gallons a day. So, I mean, we do have capacity at some of these treatment plants, correct?
Well, we don't have at our existing treatment plant. Yeah, we do have we have limited capacity there. That's why we select, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we selected the option of purchasing water from City of Portland because our existing water rights weren't adequate to supply the city as it grew. So that's why we made the decision in 2008 to enter into a contract with City of Portland.
Right. And I'm sorry, guys, I may just really not be understanding, but we currently purchase non-treated water from Portland in which we have to treat. And it sounds to me as if we're going down the way of maybe continuing to do that, and we'll be purchasing more water, which we'll have to treat. So don't we already have a process in place to treat some of this water, or am I off here?
No, so currently you purchase what is essentially treated water.
Okay.
It's just that today, Portland is, until 2027, the current water that is just chlorinated at the headworks is treated to drinking water standards prior to the current rule, the LT2 rule. And so the change that is occurring is the addition of this additional treatment process. And so you would be purchasing water that would require the same, so either you're purchasing water before the treatment plant and you're building your own treatment plant to treat to the same level, or you would be picking up at a new location to purchase water treated after the new Portland water treatment plant. Is that?
So our current facility just does not have the ability to do this process.
It is just a pump station and a pipeline that brings the water to the city. Yes.
Yeah, I should point out, when we entered into this agreement with the City of Portland in 2008, and even today, the water meets the standards. Portland had a very robust watershed protection program, and so the EPA and the state were satisfied that would protect consumers. And then in the 2015, 2014, there were increasing incidences of cryptosporidium, discovered in the Portland water supply. And so that's when the health authority said, Portland, you must build a treatment plant. And since we're the only wholesale customer that's upstream of the point where Portland intends to build a treatment plant, we entered into an agreement with the state as well, obligating us either to treat the water or purchase treated water.
Okay, totally. But I thought earlier Brian said it wasn't a requirement. So I see a hand up from Councilor Hokinson.
Sorry, I just want to have this discussion before we run out of time. It looks like we have a proposal here. Jumping ahead to the end, Brian, I apologize, but that basically says we can either buy finished or unfinished water from Portland. Both proposals tie us to a partner that we have zero leverage with and who is terrible at managing their own resources and so forth. Our best numbers here are probably woefully short. The question I would like to put out for Mike and the rest of the council is, why in the heck aren't we taking some control of the unknowns here and putting our money and efforts in developing other resources? Because this seems like this is just going to eat our lunch for the next 50 years.
Well, I think the short answer to that is, that was a decision that the council made in 2008 to sink $13 million into a connection to City of Portland. Because, as we explained early on, water rights on the Salmon River, they're really only good 9 months out of the year. and not during the 3 months when we can't withdraw any water. That's when you need the most water.
Yeah, I get that. We can't sink a well of our own. We're not, I mean,
Yeah, this
we
is,
don't have options.
I would say, the short answer would be this, in 2008 and even today, the wholesale contract with City of Portland is the sole and best option we have, given all the other issues surrounding surface water and groundwater in the Sandy area.
Long term, we're going to tie our destiny to somebody who can't manage their own cost. We don't know what that treatment plant's going to really cost. They're already overrunning left and right.
Well, I think the next slides that Brian has kind of bit more clearly define the relationship between the treated and untreated water costs.
And we don't even have a contract with them, right, at this point. So we have nothing to hold them to. We're planning on a complete unknown, and then they want to make up their budget deficit. It's us. We get to help them with that.
Yeah, our current agreement will disappear soon. But, they have to give us 5 years notice. So all the other customers are in the same boat, except they will get the notice in 2021. We'll get the notice in 2023. But the result is the same. The outcome is the same.
But there is, and just to address your earlier point, Don, is we can go past 7 o'clock for this. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Continue on.
Next slide.
Oh, it popped back into my head. Mike, I'm sorry. On the staff report, though, it says that you guys are pushing for or the City of Portland Water, it want some kind of decision by a certain date. And if I remember right, it was in June.
Correct. Both the Oregon Health Authority and the City of Portland, they both want us to respond with which way we're going to go, finished or unfinished water by the end of June.
How long have we had this date in front of us?
We signed the agreement in 2018.
Almost 4 years.
September 2018, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry. Yeah.
I'll be quiet. This brings up so many questions here. We got a lot of talking to do, boys and girls.
Next slide. So this just summarizes the annual cost of supply for the two options. Actually, you go next slide again. I'll just highlight a couple things about this. So in the first year, 2027 was forecast, you see a pretty significant capital investment for the unfinished water option in green. That's building a new treatment plant versus a less, but still significant capital investment of extending transmission main to the new Portland Water Bureau water treatment plant. Beyond that, then the difference is pretty small in the early years as you balance more expensive finished water versus the O&M cost of a city-owned treatment plant. The first yellow highlighted bubble shows a step up in water supply from Portland, so it's an assumed increase as you make up the difference of growth. And then reinvestment in capital in your treatment plant again 10 years later and again 10 years later. So you see that over time, with the assumptions that are here, the rate forecast in the near term and then 2% per year beyond that, that the finished water purchase is a little more expensive in the later years, but you save early in the initial capital. And then the next slide, please. This one is just the same information presented in a cumulative form. And again, for this analysis, what I really wanted to take away from this is that over a 30-year total cost of water, they're very similar with the assumptions that are made. There's a lot of variables, but they're essentially within 10% of one another at the end of 30 years. That's well within the margin of this analysis with all of the assumptions that we've already discussed. So it's not a clear cut and dry winner from an economic perspective, from a financial perspective. And in terms of the two options, it's a matter more of pain and rates over time versus pain in upfront initial capital investment in city facilities.
But if Portland mismanages and you were to put some error bars on these numbers, this closeness might be quite a bit apart depending on which extreme were to happen.
Yes. So the finished water option, generally speaking, is more sensitive to rate increases because it's already a more expensive unit cost of water. So a bigger rate increase is going to have a bigger impact on unit cost, and unit cost is the biggest driver in that option. So, but then how the new contract works out in terms of where the dollars are allocated also has an impact, and we don't have that information yet today. So there is definitely a lot of uncertainty and a lot of range on both of these numbers.
And on these numbers, you know, it looks like Portland's water customers are dropping like flies and going to find other sources because they're tired of getting, you know, getting the bill. They're going to go find their own water. So are these based on, you know, all the folks that are, you know, they're Clackamas, Tualatin, all these folks are going to other sources. Are these reflecting the obvious increased cost it's going to be to the Portland water customers to make up that difference?
Yeah, so the rate forecast that the Water Bureau provided in the early years through the first 10 years does reflect the change in the wholesale customer base that's anticipated today.
But that could also change as more people drop out of their customer base.
There is some potential for that. If other wholesale customers went away, it would shift the numbers, yes.
So at one point, 19, I think it was, 40% of their customers were wholesale outside.
I can't speak to that. That sounds a little high. Maybe that's closely. Yes, it'll be significantly less with Tualatin Valley Water District going away, and then potentially the city of Gresham and Rockwood Water.
I have concerns. I guess you guys know that.
I'll skip ahead here. Next slide. So just high level comparison of the two alternatives around the criteria we talked about. So again, life cycle costs, these are very similar. The difference really is in initial capital requirement. Unfinished water does require a much more significant capital investment between now and 2027. In terms of implementation risk, I think this is an important differentiator. In the case of finished water, the Water Bureau is responsible for compliance. Most of the infrastructure has been planned already, and funding is in place in the form of a large WIFIA loan. And so they are moving ahead, and they're far along in that process. If you were to go with unfinished water, that puts the compliance responsibility on the city, which requires planning, siting, design, and construction of a new water treatment plant. So in terms of timing, that's something that would need to start fairly soon in order to make that timeline. You have about 6 years still now, and so it's very doable in that timeline. But if you chose that path, then you would need to initiate that work fairly soon. Operational complexity, I mentioned the disinfectant issue on the finished water side. That's a manageable issue, but it is one to be considered. Otherwise, you have no additional facilities to operate. If you choose the unfinished water option, the city's building a second water treatment plant that would need to be staffed and operated either with through a contract like you have now with Veolia or another vendor, or with city hired staff. In terms of resilience and reliability, they're similar. We're talking about new facilities in both cases, so they would be constructed to current standards with everything we understand about resilience. And then, as I mentioned, the impact of rate changes. The finished water option is more sensitive to percent increases in rates due to the higher unit costs, but there are a lot of variables other than just that. So I gave it a slightly lower score as a preliminary cut. But you see here that it's not, even with this analysis, it's not cut and dry depending on which criteria you weight more. Both have their challenges. Both are significant in cost. So the two options are very comparable. Next slide. So I think to your point so far, the goal here is that we need to confirm what additional data is needed and analysis is needed to really select that forward-looking water supply strategy. We'll go away, refine our analysis. We need to return to you with a recommendation for consideration. And then the goal here is to approve and execute a water supply strategy, as Mike mentioned, under the bilateral compliance agreement. OHA DWS needs an answer here by the end of June of this year. From the perspective of the Portland Water Bureau, they are well on their way in terms of working through design of both pipeline corridors and the treatment plant. So understanding which path we're selecting is going to be important in that process. There is some shared infrastructure potential in the finished water option. The alignment for that pipeline could parallel pipelines that the Water Bureau will also need to construct. And so there is some opportunity there for shared infrastructure that could reduce some of the capital cost. And then finally, obviously, this is a significant capital investment either way and has long-term utility rate impacts. And so developing a funding strategy for whichever path is selected going forward. And next slide. Actually, with that, I'll stop talking and take other questions.
Oh, I know there's questions out there, you guys. Maybe a few comments too.
I'm going to just go out there again. I think tying our future to a partner that we have no leverage with at this point in time is so risky. I mean, whatever cost projections we have could be completely gone when we renegotiate the contract. We don't know. And we have no leverage to negotiate that. What are we negotiating with? We need water. That's not a strong position.
I couldn't agree with you more, Don. And it's our water, man.
Yeah. So if we were to pick, if we're stuck with two options of filtered or unfiltered, I vote unfiltered because at least that gives us an option to seek out an additional source and our investment doesn't 100% tie us to Portland. We might be tied in the short term, but it gives us options to drill or acquire or figure out something.
Yep, thank you. Kathleen and then Carl.
Well, if you look back at old city council meetings in 2008, I was kind of the lone voice, and it was an awkward voice for me to kind of be up there testifying to city council meetings that I didn't think it was a good idea that we hooked up to the city of Portland's water system. That was kind of awkward because somebody we know was in charge of the $11 million project. But that said, the thing that's kind of concerning me now, I knew that city of Portland was going to have to go because they've been talking about having to, filter their water since I worked in the Bull Run, 30 years ago. And they've been able to get away with it for this long, but I knew it was all coming. But at this point, I'm seeing other places go with wells, and even the city of Portland goes with wells because of the issues with, the filtration in the Portland in Bull Run is going to help because if God forbid they have a fire or anything else, it's just so difficult for them to use the water they have because they don't have filtration for the sediment out there. But what I'd like to see us kind of look a little bit closer at is the opportunity to develop some wells, possibly around Sandy, that we could then bring the Alder Creek water down to a treatment plant here in this area and treat it here, and then have a wells that add to that supply and treat it all in one place. And then we have hopefully a more, long lasting, not depending on Portland's, option. I think Gresham or some other cities are doing that. And yeah, I guess I'd like to see that option kind of staffed out a little bit.
Thank you, Kathleen. Real quick before I go to you, Carl, Jordan, we had a couple other presenters tonight on this topic, correct? Portland Water, as well as Lauren here from the Cottrell. Just as far as how we do this, I mean, should we put our questions to Brian now and hold discussion until after other two presentations? Do you have a recommendation on that?
Yeah, I think in respect to the folks that are here tonight, we probably should make sure that they have an opportunity to speak and give their presentations. And then we can continue the discussion after that.
So council, I see, of course, Jeremy and Carl, you got your hands up. I'm still going to go to you, but I'm hoping if you have a question geared towards Brian. If not, if it's a comment, why don't we hold it to the end of the presentations? Carl, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't get to taking my hand down fast
Fine.
enough. I'm pretty much in Don and Kathleen's boat. So I'm going to leave my comments to just that.
Okay, perfect. Why don't we start with Lauren with the Cottrell CPO.
Hi there.
Good evening, Lauren. Welcome.
I'm going to try to share my screen here. I'm no pro at this like you guys are. So do I just click that green button?
I believe so.
Okay.
We're not pros. We use Jeff.
Jeff, does she need to be a panelist of some sort? Okay, looks like
panelist. Yep.
All
Is
right.
it there?
Yep, we see it.
Awesome. Okay. I'll try to keep this within the 15 minutes I was given. So thank you very much for letting me speak with you today. I'm going to read off of my notes here so I stay on track. I am the secretary of the Cottrell Community Planning Organization, representing property owners, agricultural businesses, and small businesses that are directly impacted by the City of Portland's proposed water filtration facility at Carpenter Lane. Cottrell CPO is supported by and partnered with several neighboring CPOs across Clackamas County, neighborhood associations across East Multnomah County, and hundreds of Sandy residents that have committed to fighting this massive industrial project. We've had several signing events at the ammo sale at the Sandy Buy Mart. We've set up at Garen's. We've had hundreds of people sign our petition that are residents of Sandy. Today, I'd like to focus on how this project directly impacts you guys, the City of Sandy, specifically how the citizens and the businesses of Sandy will pay for this $1 billion project with increased water rates, how Sandy's services and infrastructure will be stretched, and how the conversion of farmland and the rural community, which I live in, will be expanded, the urbanization will be expanded upon closer and closer to Sandy, so that Portland creep coming in. So as Brian described, I'm not going to go into great detail about the crypto issue, but as you know, due to the concentrations of cryptosporidium within the Bull Run watershed, although extremely low and derived from species not known to negatively affect humans, the city must treat their drinking water due to the EPA's LT2 rule. And so the high cost of this project is dependent on the method that they chose and the location. And so although several treatment options exist, the city decided on implementing the most expensive option, filtration, as opposed to UV, which is much less expensive. And cities, you know, across the country like San Francisco and Seattle use UV to treat for cryptosporidium. But the city decided on filtration back in 2019 for $350 million. Since then, the project has exploded to $1.2 billion and with estimates up to $1.5 billion. And the price tag grew largely because of the location. And they have several options. They could build it at Headworks. You know, no site is perfect. They chose Carpenter Lane. And why they chose Carpenter Lane, I'll get into in just a little bit. But that price tag is significantly increased due to the location. So you've got this facility that's located here in the red. This is right off of, you can see to the northeast is the Sandy River, and it sits on the bluff of the Sandy River watershed there. The raw and treated pipelines need to connect to the main conduit, which is that black line there. And for resiliency and redundancy, they want to put in 2 pipelines. So that's over 4 miles of pipe that's caused the cost of this project to expand significantly. So why here? Why do they want to put this here? Why ask ratepayers to spend so much money when the city can save hundreds of millions of dollars by choosing a different location? It doesn't primarily serve our community that we live in. It won't even serve East Multnomah County where they want to put it. So why? And here's a picture of the location, and you can kind of infer why they want to put it here. This picture is taken from the western edge of the property looking directly east. This is actively farmed property owned by the city since the mid-70s and sits at the headwaters of the Johnson Creek. This property is surrounded by actively farmed land in both Clackamas and Multnomah counties. In our community, we call this, jokingly but seriously, a trophy project. Because of the scope and scale, the incredible price tag, and the unobstructed views of Mount Hood. Why put their project in the depths of the Bull Run when you can have it here, 30 minutes from Portland, at an idyllic location? When the Water Bureau presented their decision to our community back in 2019, they first highlighted the visitor center that they want to put here. So making it very clear that this was going to be a place the city would promote their water program, host meetings, and tout their state-of-the-art city investment. So to jump into the water rates, Brian did a nice job describing what those projections might look like. You must be aware that they've been insensitive to the ratepayers and wholesale customers from the beginning. This trophy project will be on the backs of the residents and businesses during a time of economic uncertainty. They've been unclear with the public from the beginning, and I encourage you to demand the projected increases with both the high and the low bookends of this project. The preliminary numbers that they've presented to City Council and the Public Utility Board, and even the media, indicate a range of 15 to 18% increase. And that's an increase that's a little bit different than what Brian was talking about, but a recent investigation by K2 News that was just aired on May 3rd cited that, and they had been in contact with the Water Bureau on those numbers. So I don't know if those initial estimates include the wholesale customers, and also taking into consideration some of the smaller districts that are leaving. And also, I don't know if those rates are based on that $820 million price tag back in 2019, when it jumped from 350 to 820 million. I don't know if it takes into account the over $1 billion price tag right now. So aside from the projected rate increases, there's also, the city of Sandy should also be concerned about how this is going to impact transportation. So during construction of this facility, which is estimated over 70 acres on this 96-acre parcel, it will impact the roads that feed into Sandy, primarily Bluff Road and the smaller arteries that feed into it. During construction, hundreds of trucks per day will transport 1.2 million cubic yards of prime farmland soil from the site. Heavy equipment and machinery will be needed, and they estimate 200 to 300 workers per day will be on site for the construction of this facility. This is a huge wear and tear on our already tattered rural roads in both Clackamas and Multnomah counties. And who will pay for reinforcement and repair of these roads? And how much more will this cost the city of Sandy? This project will also have to draw from emergency services in Sandy. In the event of an emergency, Sandy Fire will be the first responders to this site. I live right where those water towers are, where that tuft of trees are right behind it. I live right there, and Sandy Fire serves me. So Sandy Fire would be the first responder to this industrial project. They will have 8,000 dry tons of chemical at this site. They will be producing ozone on site. There is a school less than 500 feet from the site. And so this is going to stretch the city of Sandy's emergency services, not just fire, but also law enforcement as well. And urbanization. So this is yet another example of continued loss of agriculture and our rural communities, which will lead to further urbanization closer and closer to Sandy, threatening our small town community that we love. The proposed site is designated by Metro as a rural reserve, a boundary that was set in 2011, and is home to the heart of the nursery agricultural economy for both Clackamas and Multnomah counties. Bringing an urban project of this scope and scale near Sandy will change the complexion, allowing Portland and its urban development to eventually creep in. And this is just a map that we've put together that the green indicates the rural reserve boundaries, and you can see that the water treatment plant is proposed to go within that boundary, and also all of the treated pipeline as well. And the raw water pipeline runs through a lot of EFU property and forest designated property as well. So just to sum it up here, there are acute and long-term impacts to the city of Sandy. Again, there's the increased water rates, and there's the agricultural economic loss. There's stress to Sandy's transportation and emergency services, and the increased urbanization near Sandy. And this is just the view of where they propose to put it. And I'll take any questions.
All right, questions for Lauren?
I'd just like to say thanks for coming and presenting that information. Found it very useful.
Absolutely. I thought it was great, Lauren. Thank you very much for coming and giving us that presentation tonight.
If you don't mind me saying, I know you guys were talking about the water rates, and if you guys were to go with the unfinished option, the estimates, the cost estimates included a water treatment, like a water filtration facility up there in Sandy. Well, your option, you don't have to treat with filtration. You have several different options. You don't have to invest in a massive filtration facility. You can do UV and do it at a fraction of the cost, you know, and your ratepayers wouldn't have to pay that astronomical cost and investment.
That's right. Thank you, Lauren. With that, I'm guessing it's you, Mr. David Peters with Portland Water Bureau. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for having us out and sharing a little bit about our program. I am David Peters. I'm the program director with the Portland Water Bureau for the Bull Run filtration improvements. And I'm joined today by Cecilia Hune, who's our Water Bureau Finance Director. So if there are questions related to the finance side, she'll be able to help me out with that. I recognize that you have a difficult decision ahead of you here. And I recognize that because much of the same conversation I hear you having, we had to walk our city council through back in 2017. And these are not easy choices as you begin to think about the long-term future for your community. These are difficult choices to make. So, but we are here. I'm not here to advocate one way or another for any of the choices that are presented. What I'd like to do is just take the opportunity to provide a little bit of an overview of the work that we are doing on our filtration program. And so I'll jump into that. I do have a few slides to share with you. I'll share my screen here. And okay, looks like you can see that. So
I cannot. Can anybody else see that? Yeah, we cannot see that.
Yeah, okay. I guess I had one more button to push there.
Looks like something's coming up.
There we go.
I can see it, sir. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So our Bull Run treatment projects, our filtration plant and the pipelines, Mrs. Corder did a nice job of kind of providing the maps of where we're located and where the plant is and pipelines will be. So we are looking at this project to be able to provide safe and abundant water into the next century. And as we do that, we're going to be improving public health through a good source of supply. As we construct these facilities, we'll be providing benefits to our economy, and we are really looking to the future of our communities as we go forward. And we think long-term like that because that's what we've done since we started serving water from the Bull Run watershed over 125 years ago. We're now at a point that we are serving nearly 1 million people in the Portland metropolitan area through our retail customers and our 19 wholesale customers, including the city of Sandy. And we use about 100 million, or we serve about 100 million gallons a day from this supply. So it's been a very productive source that provides benefit to a lot of our community and our industry in Portland. So coming in September 2027, Mike Walker mentioned this earlier, that we are in a compliance agreement with the Oregon Health Authority to provide additional treatment for cryptosporidium. And so that was a driver for this, but the filtration facility goes beyond just providing the benefit of treating for cryptosporidium. It also provides better water quality by removing sediments, removing organic material and other contaminants that might be introduced into our water supply. And so this filtration facility will be there to provide us reliability even after events like turbidity events, after a big storm or a forest fire in a watershed. And we also are, as we're doing our planning for this facility, we're thinking about the environment. One of the choices, or a couple of the choices we made on this facility, one is this will be what we call a zero liquid discharge facility. So there is no water being returned to the Sandy River. We're not dumping any waste products from the treatment of the water at this facility. All the water that comes into it will be treated and served to our customers. Additionally, the site that we're located at, because this will continue to be a gravity-fed system. So for the last 125 years, the water has flowed from the Bull Run watershed by gravity into our pipelines all the way to reservoirs in Mount Tabor and Washington Park. And this facility is located in such a way that we'll be able to continue that gravity flow from the watershed. And so on this slide, across the bottom, it shows that we have been working on our planning 2018 to 2020 as we've generated the location and kind of what the treatment facilities will be. We are just now getting started on the design of these facilities. And so we just got our designers hired and started looking into the details of what these facilities might look like. And that's why we have more information now in terms of what those costs will be and what the designs will look like. And we would anticipate the construction we begin out in 2023. So our project decisions on this have been guided by a number of key goals. I mentioned the compliance for the cryptosporidium, the long-term 2 enhanced surface water treatment rule. We're looking to improve the long-term reliability, the benefit of having this new facility, the treatment facility, as well as the pipelines, is that they'll be built to seismic standards. They'll be built to be resilient for that long term into the next 100 years. And we do this because we are delivering water to nearly 1 million people out there, and they expect that to happen every day, every minute of every day. And as we do that, we are working to manage costs and keep water rates affordable. And I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how we're doing that. So in regards to our health, we picked filtration, and then we did a pilot study to show that that filtration technology would do the job that we hoped it would. And so that pilot study did show that we would be able to treat to the levels needed to provide treatment for cryptosporidium. And we also found that it will reduce disinfection byproducts and also do well at removing turbidity from the water. So all the benefits we hope to be able to achieve, we were able to show we can achieve by running a pilot plant, which is a small treatment facility that we ran for about a year to do that study. As we think about the health, we do know that folks are concerned about chemicals. We are looking at systems that are using chemicals that we find in our homes. And we are also looking at technologies to be safe at the site. And we've looked at technologies that are called inherently safer technologies. One example of that is right now we use chlorine gas to disinfect our water up in the watershed. We'll be moving away from chlorine gas and be looking at generating sodium hypochlorite on site. And that will be safer for our employees, safer for the environment, and more sustainable as we look to the future. As we look to the impacts on the economy, we have done a couple things there. We have received WIFIA loan. So Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act is what WIFIA stands for. And we secured federal financing at a very good interest rate with flexible repayment terms that will be saving our ratepayers, I should say, over $247 million. And that is while we're building this large facility, and this facility will create over 4,600 jobs as we put in this critical infrastructure to safeguard our water into the future. Which leads us to our future. And I talked briefly about many of the benefits from a water quality standpoint and also building these facilities to be resilient to whatever may come along from large storms, wildfires, both the pipelines and the treatment facility itself will be able to continue to provide treatment in most instances as we look to the future. In regards to the pipelines, our existing pipelines are, well, one of them is over 100 years old. The other two are nearing 70 years in age. And so we will be replacing sections of pipe that have been vulnerable in the past with these new seismically resilient pipelines. And we're putting 2 pipes in and 2 pipes out, as has been described, in an effort to ensure that if there's damage or maintenance needed on one, that we can continue to supply water to all of our customers in the meantime. And these are the routes that we've been looking at. They are located in easements that we already own or in the right-of-way. There are a handful on properties that we don't have rights to yet, but for the most part, they are in easements or right-of-ways. We have been doing field investigations over the last several months to make sure the conditions are right and we get our design parameters right for those pipelines, and are finding very good conditions for the installation of these pipelines. And as we do this, we're also taking note of the environmental conditions and concerning wildlife and habitat and wetlands and those types of conditions, and making sure we're taking that information into our designs so that we aren't impacting the environment as we're going through and installing these. We're all sensitive to the fact that these are agricultural areas, and we'll be creating, as we go through, that we'll be putting the conditions back to the way they were, so that agriculture can continue to function in these areas. So as we've gotten into the design, as we've mentioned, we've been sensitive to some of the scenarios you've heard about in terms of wholesale customers that have chosen other sources. We've been sensitive to costs. We've done, we're going to do this construction as a construction manager general contractor, which is an alternative construction method where we've already brought our contractor on board, and they're working with our designers to help us find the most effective way of constructing these facilities. And so we are using them and also using value engineering techniques to help us control costs and make sure we have the most efficient design that we can put together. Because of the wholesale changes, we have reduced the capacity of this facility by 10 million gallons a day. That has been taken into account with the costs and pricing that have been presented to you earlier. And as we go through this, we'll continue that value engineering process and be evaluating cost management options in detail as we go throughout the rest of our design. We have been working to keep the community informed and involved. That started early in the process, as early as 2018. We reached out to our ratepayers and our customers and the neighbors in the Boring and Sandy areas, and have taken that input, and that's been informing our project decisions. We have multiple venues where we're sharing regular updates through our e-newsletters. We've had online events. We have social media where we keep folks up to date of progress and activities that are going on in the neighborhoods. We've been working with a site advisory group of neighbors and groups that work in the area to put together criteria for a good neighbor agreement. And we're working on finalizing that with the site advisory group here next month. But we will continue those project briefings as we go forward. And we'll be meeting with that group on a regular basis all the way through construction of these facilities. So as we're moving forward, we're working towards guaranteed maximum prices with our construction manager general contractor. So they'll be involved in the design, so they'll be able to put the pricing together as we go along to get the best value. We are focused on cost management to balance our performance with the reliability of these facilities. We know we'll have to make choices as we go along, and we are committed to maintaining affordability. So our WIFI alone has allowed us to do that with the rate information that you've heard and has been shared with our ratepayers. We've been able to maximize the benefit for our customers. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we're committed to continuing to meet with site advisory groups and other stakeholders as we go through our design and construction. And as you've seen on my slides, we do have links to our website and all the information that we've shared with these site advisory groups. All of our reports that we've created are available on that website if you would like to read more about our program. And finally, just an overview of our schedule. We are here in 2021, which shows us solidly in design on both the facility and our pipelines. We are working towards our next milestone with the Oregon Health Authority, which is to provide our design to the Oregon Health Authority for their review, and we need to do that by October of 2022. And hence the June timeframe that was mentioned earlier about us needing some information back from the city of Sandy. That's so that we can ensure that we would get any of that information incorporated into our design for that submittal in 2022. I'll point out that we did make our first deadline with the Oregon Health Authority, which was to submit that pilot study I described. And we did that in November of last year, of 2020. And all of this would be leading up to getting to construction in 2023 and completing construction in 2027. So that's our high level overview of what our current status is and where we're heading. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Peters before we jump into discussion? Don.
Hey, you no doubt, David, thank you for the presentation. No doubt heard my position earlier on Portland Water Bureau being a good provider, a good service provider for us. I have my concerns, and while you said a lot of really nice things, I want to understand how you are going to take care of Sandy. And before I finish, let me explain. You know, what was it? 15 years ago, we entered into an agreement. We built a huge pipeline so that we could get water at an expected rate. When you located your facility where you did, you basically said, hey, that was nice that you built that pipeline, Sandy. Now build another one. How is that being a good supplier to Sandy? And what's going to keep you from hosing us in the future again?
Well, I wasn't there when those agreements were signed. I wasn't involved in the agreements that were set up before. But what we have looked at is in an effort to find the best match for the hydraulics for distribution to all of our customers. That's what went into.
But not Sandy.
No, we did look at Sandy, and at the time, you can still receive water from that location. And that was some of the thinking that went on into our conversation at that point in time.
But if you'd have located your thing upstream, we wouldn't be faced with building a new filtration plant. We would still be having a good relationship here.
Okay.
Right?
It sounds like that would be the case. Yes.
Well, otherwise, we're just paying extra money. So we're talking about rates, but that doesn't count for the pipeline we got to build.
Well, what we can do is work with City of Sandy in terms of, we've already talked about some options for sharing costs in terms of the pipeline and requirements that be needed to get the finished water. We are.
Would you like to build our pipeline for us? That would be a good partner.
Let's keep a certain level of decorum here. Let's go to Kathleen.
Hi, thanks for the presentation, David. That was helpful. Could you just kind of quickly summarize how come the filtration plan, and I understand why the filtration plan is needed because of, again, you know, if there's a fire in the Bull Run, it's gonna be very difficult to, you know, put out. I used to work in the Bull Run, and I know, you know, the trees are 8 feet in diameter and crisscross like pickup sticks. So trying to fight a fire in there when you've closed and decommissioned most of the roads is a problem. You've got a lot of property that you've acquired in a land exchange with the Forest Service. And I'm just wondering how come you didn't consider putting the treatment plant in the Bull Run on some of that newly acquired land or closer to the source?
So that was our early planning, and we found that because there's not enough flat area up there in the watershed to be able to do that. As you're aware, the Bull Run is a pretty narrow canyon that comes down as it comes down through the foothills there. And so that was examined. Other issues were it got us away from gravity feed. We wouldn't be able to find a location up there that would allow us to continue the gravity feed into town. So all of those things were evaluated early in our process.
Yeah, Walker Prairie comes to mind, just as a flat area at the mouth of the Bull Run. But
All right, Councilor Exner, Carl.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm more understanding that you're committed to your spot, so there won't be much differences in where locations are at this time. My question revolves around the financial side of things. One of our presenters just half an hour ago from our engineering source said that their expectation is that the price for our treated water, I think we're calling it a finished product, to us could be as much as 5 and 6 times what our current rate is. Can you kind of give me an idea what kind of increases in our rates would be if we do go with you as a finished product? And I know that there's other options, they'd always be something less than, but I'm looking at the highest rate option and what that might look like.
Cecilia, is that something you might be able to answer?
Sure. I'm Cecilia Hind, the Finance Director for the Portland Water Bureau. Counselor, I just want to make sure I understood your question correctly. You're asking for what the rate would be from Portland if for the finished water, which is on Brian's table, the slide. So.
Right. So I just want to confirm that finished water product's going to be 5 and 6 times what we are currently paying you at this time for a finished product. And to me, that would be able to lead me to make decisions about whether or not we would buy water from you in the future. And I think that's just, for me, it's a reasonable question that give me a ballpark understanding about what increases you're going to expect us to pay for if we do buy from you in 26, 27.
Yeah, and quite honestly, this is something that, when we reviewed the analysis that Brian had put together, that we provided some comments on, is that given that we are working on a new agreement, quite frankly, the cost of, the rates for all of our wholesale customers is really unknown at this point. What we provided is based on the current allocation method under the current agreement. We are working on a new agreement that could very well change the allocation that goes into setting wholesale rates, which then of course would alter the rates that were presented, both the finished and unfinished. So our current agreement with most of our wholesale customers expire or ends in June, on June 30th of 2026. Sandy doesn't expire for a couple of years after that. But again, that is something that we're working toward. And until we have sort of more agreement, until we're further along in our conversation about what the new agreement looks like, I can't confirm, what the actual rate will be in the future beyond 26 at this point.
So, and I gather from what you just said then that not only could you not predict what kind of rates at least you'll be proposing to us in those negotiations, but that even those numbers would increase substantially as time went by. And I know that your infiltration plant has increased 3 and 4 times what it was originally thought. So would I be right in saying that not only would the price be substantially higher, but there will probably be solid increases over time?
I honestly don't know if the rates will end up to be higher as a result of the new agreements. Certainly as the project cost increase, if it does, that could have an impact on rates to go upward. Again, we are looking at new allocation methodologies associated with all of our wholesale rates that could go both ways depending on the different variables that we're looking at. Some could cause rates to go up for our wholesale customers. Others would actually have a lowering effect on wholesale rates. As far as ongoing costs beyond sort of when the filtration plant is on board, It would just be sort of the O&M escalation, what would be considered inflation on top of the annual inflation associated with O&M costs. So once we have a known amount on the cost of the filtration plant, that would be built into the rates, and then the increases would be primarily associated with increase to O&M costs.
Okay, then my final follow-up is, do you have an expectation about when you will know what those might be sent to us, what those prices might be?
We're working on those conversations about the new agreement right now. Our goal is to have those in place within the next year. All of our wholesale customers are interested in knowing, how the rates could be changing. Portland is equally interested in, sort of getting to that as well, because that does also impact our financial planning. It's, 2026 isn't very far away. We're looking at 5 years. We have provided notices to all of our wholesale customers that our intent is to have a new agreement in place of the current agreement. And it's going to take, again, right now we're looking at concepts and how we want to allocate costs to our wholesale customers, especially in light of the wholesale customers that are intending to leave. We're hoping to have that information sooner than later. And quite honestly, it just really depends on the conversations that we're having. Those are pretty active. Mike Walker is participating in some of those conversations with us to understand what are some of those provisions that we're looking at changing compared to the.
Uh-oh. It's her, not me, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my end of my questions.
All right. Thank you. With that, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks. So a question for you, David. I might be the only one with Mike on here that was going through the original plan with the city of Portland. In the times when the city of Portland Water Bureau was describing the source of water that we get from Bull Run, there's certain times of the year when the water gets shut off and we don't get that. And Portland receives their water from the wells on the Columbia River. Typically, my understanding is around the rainy season when there's a lot of sediment and mud and those type of things. I could be wrong on my details. It has been 15 years. But in that, they were coming from the wells of the Columbia River, which I'm assuming will still not need to be filtered, which wouldn't need to be pumped all the way back out to Carpenter Lane, which would mean we'd never received water during that time frame as well for you, because we had our source during that time of the year flows that would handle our need. Going forward, as our city grows and everything else, we may not need that. So is that going to be still the case, that you guys will use your Columbia River wells to supply the city of Portland their source of water for some time, and we will still be either untreated or treated, regardless of which way, still without water during those timeframes?
So good question, and that is something that we've been thinking about. So with the options that are being presented, if you take our filtered water, we still have other customers upstream of this facility besides the city of Sandy. There's a couple other small water districts, and we have some individual customers that are on a back feed line. So we are committed, and we currently have the ability to pump enough groundwater back up to this Carpenter Lane area to feed those customers, which would include the city of Sandy. So we would continue to be able to provide you with water that will meet all the drinking water standard. If you choose to go with the raw water, and I believe the reason Brian and Mike have talked to you about a filtration facility is that you would need to plan on being able to treat that water for those times when you had when there was high turbidity coming down our system. So that those are the choices that are being made. But if you take the filtered water, you would not be shut off because of a turbidity event. We would be able to provide you with water during that time.
And then what other customers are you feeding in between there that you mentioned that would come off of Carpenter Lane there? You said there was a couple more besides us there. And I'm assuming not View Acres, because View Acres was your customer, now ours, off of this deal, when to get them off of yours as it passed their connection to you at that time.
I believe they're still under contract with us also, but we do have some individual customers that are along Lusted Road, and we feed all the way up to our Sandy River Station facility, which is there at right on the Sandy River by Dodge Park. So we have some individual customers along that line. Cecilia, I don't know if you know what other wholesale customers are out there, if any.
Yeah, I mean, Lusted Water District is one that comes to my mind. That is right off the conduit there.
Is Pleasant Home Water District as well, I think?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Pleasant Home Water District is as well. And they actually have the 2 tanks you saw on the pictures of the site. Those are Pleasant Home Water District tanks. So we are coordinating with them in terms of connecting their system also.
Thank you.
Don.
Thank you. And my apologies, David, if I was getting a little too cheeky there earlier. I do want to follow up on that a little bit more, but on a serious note, the first couple of background questions. Is the Portland Water Bureau under the Public Utilities Commission, or is it independently regulated? Who approves your rates?
Our city council approves our rates.
Okay. So you have a Portland Utility Board that you use for budget setting. Do they look at rates as well?
Cecilia?
They advises our Portland City Council about our rates and our finances and our capital program.
Okay. Are there any non-city people who sit on that board?
Non-city members, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, and my question is, how would Sandy as an industrial wholesale customer be represented in your rate setting process?
I guess we set our wholesale rates based on the agreement that we have in place. So it's very consistent with the provisions in the agreement. There is very specific provisions in our agreement that stipulates how the wholesale rates are calculated. So there isn't, how do I say it? I mean, you know, there's, if you want to call it a formula, that's what we follow. And it's laid out in the wholesale agreement. So there isn't a decision as to whether, you know, it could be anything different than.
All right. Lastly, other utilities like the one I work in, when a customer needs to have a large hookup, the cost of that hookup is usually borne by the provider of that service, in the case that I work in. And then the customer, or sorry, it's paid for by the customer, but the customer then gets credits for this investment they've had to make in order to hook up to that provider's line. Have you ever explored that? Would you be interested in looking at some sort of either credit-based or shared financing? I mean, we're talking about a significant investment that we're going to have to make to hook up because you moved your plant, because of where you've sited your plant. Have you ever done that for your for a wholesale customer? Have you ever participated in a joint build?
My time with the Bureau, the infrastructure is already in place as far as the agreements that we have in place to serve the existing wholesale customers. And yeah, the agreement that Sandy have with Portland currently, I know that there were investments that were also necessary to enter into the current agreement that we have with you. I wasn't part of that conversation, so I'm not sure, but certainly I think there was some cost sharing arrangement made there.
All right, well, food for thought.
I just might add to the last comment also, you were asking about how is Sandy involved in the rates. I mean, Cecilia is generating the contract by working with all the water managers, and the water managers are representatives from all the different water districts that receive wholesale water from us. So that contract is being drafted with that group. And so they have input into what those formulas are that are going to be part of that contract.
Right, for the new agreement, yes.
For the new agreement, yeah.
Okay, Kathleen.
Hi, Celia, thank you for the information. So what I thought I heard you say was that you can't tell us for sure what the rates are going to be. But I'm sitting here, we just had a presentation from a previous speaker that talked about we have to make a water supply decision by June of this year. And I'm feeling like I kind of understand where y'all are at, is that, you know, you don't know how many other customers might go different places to get their water, and that would change everybody's rate. But I guess, you know, before we make a decision, I'm feeling like the need to have some certainty as to what the rates would be in the future. Because it's, you know, for a 30-year period or something, so that we have the information we need to make the decision. So are you able to get the cost? Yeah, I mean, I know you guys have been estimating costs, but it feels like you haven't really got the actual construction costs identified to be able to set the rates. And there's no certainty that those rates will actually be what they are, but you want us to make a decision without having the, you know, firm numbers. Is that, I don't want to mischaracterize it. So if I have, please help us understand better.
So the uncertainty around the wholesale rates, you know, certainly the cost of the project could also influence it, but the bigger uncertainty really evolves around the current conversation that we're having about having a new agreement. So that is a conversation that we have started and that we are continuing to, and until we have more clarity on what the new agreement would look like, you know, as far as how we would be calculating wholesale rates, I wouldn't be able to give you, you know, confirmation on the rates that we would be looking at in 2030. In fact, I wouldn't have certainty beyond 2026.
So we're going to make a decision without knowing what the cost to us is. And is that fair? Is that what you just said? I just want to make sure I understand where we're at, because that doesn't feel real comfortable for us.
And I certainly recognize that. And yeah, I mean, what I could offer is the information that was presented by Brian as far as the analysis is our, again, a calculation based on current methodology. And we do know that that methodology is going to be changing under the new agreement.
So when will we have the number for the proposed agreement that you want us to sign? When would we have, and will that number be firm, and for how long?
We're working toward, again, the new agreement. And as far as the rates, we can, you know, when we have information on the provisions of the new agreement, we will certainly be looking at forecasting based on the new calculations for wholesale rates, but it will be a forecast as well, because every year we're looking to update our forecasts, looking to update the assumption that goes into the forecast. So we're talking about inflation rates that will be updated, you know, allocation of costs is updated. So quite honestly, you know, the forecast is what we will be able to provide when we have more certainty on the new agreement. But it would be just that. It would be the forecast based on a set of assumptions that we would be sharing.
And my final question then is, y'all get the water, you know, out of the Bull Run, and if we choose to take unfiltered water, would wouldn't it be easy to, I mean, I don't want to say easy, but wouldn't it be possible to set the rate for that at about what we're paying now? Because all the costs of doing the filtration and everything else are happening after we pull our straw out of the lake.
That would be true if we were still assuming that the current allocation of cost remains the same. And again, that is exactly what we're looking at changing under the new agreement. So even for unfinished water or unfiltered water, that cost allocation could change the rate that was presented.
All right, and Kathleen, may I just say, take our straw out of the lake may be one of my favorite lines I've heard you say, Councillor Sheldon.
That was a good one. So David and Cecilia, first of all, thank you. I know this is kind of like walking into the lion's den. So, I'm new at this, and but I'm hearing a lot of different numbers thrown around. I'm hearing anywhere from 350 million to 1.2 billion. Can you help me wrap my mind around where you're getting the numbers that Brian presented that we've seen, so that at least we know where we're starting at? And how you guys came up with those numbers? Where are those coming from?
So the projection for rates that we provided to Brian in the analysis assumes 820 million direct project cost for the filtration plant and pipelines. And it, of course, again, it assumes the current cost allocation methodology under the current agreement.
Okay, that's still gibberish to me, but I will ask you this. So you said 850 million. One number that keeps getting thrown around that I've heard multiple times from different sources, the 1.2 billion. Is that number at all by your calculations accurate? And where are they getting that number? Can you help me understand that?
I can tell you where that number is coming from, certainly. That does include a contingency that we have included for the WIFIA loan that we received through EPA. So as part of the application for the loan, we included all of the direct cost, indirect cost, as well as some of our borrowing costs for issuing revenue bonds. And we also included a contingency amount of about 410 million. And it was something that EPA accepted as eligible project costs given the early stage of the project that we're in. Currently, we're budgeted at 850 million for the project. And so any use of that contingency would require us to go back to the Portland City Council for approval.
But you said the contingency is 5 to 10 million. Did I understand that right?
410.
How much? 110?
No, 410 million.
410. Okay, thank you.
That's so it's the 850 plus the 410. That so it gets at 1.2 billion dollars that you're hearing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to start kind of getting us to a discussion of next steps. Is there any other questions for either David or Cecilia before we let them go for the evening? Well, we weren't too easy on you, but we certainly appreciate your time here this evening, your presentation, your attention to our questions. Really appreciate it, David and Cecilia.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity, and we'll be happy to continue to work with Mike and answer any other questions that you may have. So.
All right, thank you. All right, team. Well, you know, we're open for a little bit of discussion tonight. You know, we are 50 minutes, you know, past 7 here. We are going to be putting this on our agenda, you know, for our future meetings here. We do have a little bit of time. So I'll look for more kind of heavier discussion direction for staff at a future meeting. With that, Jeremy.
Yeah, just as going back to the question I had originally that we put off till we had heard these other conversations. You know, I have I was in the council, I joined the council, and within that 1 year, it's kind of like what some of you guys are doing brand new. You've been in a couple months, and now you're talking water. I guess it's better than Stan, who was talking sewer, but it's a little cleaner. But and so, was told, learned a lot about water right as I got in, a lot about water rights. And I think it would be good for David or someone before they've retired, but we had a really good, someone was on the same lawyer company group that had done a lot of those, Mike Hammond, I believe his name was, or someone had done a lot of water rights with other cities and municipalities about why we couldn't pull off the Salmon River, and even though we had owned the water rights for a long time, and why we couldn't dig a well, and why can we not dig a well today, and those type of things is what we've been told. It sounds like Gresham's able to dig wells, but why not Sandy? And it's always been one of these things that I'm going, well, if they can do it, why can't we? Do we just not have a big enough lawyer team or a big enough population to do that? And Brian, I saw you smile there, and I could be totally off. And again, this has been 15 years ago that we're discussing this, 14, 15 years ago, and having a time of stage where we had just come through right before getting on council, where we had a time where people with odd numbers could water their grass, and 2 days a week, and the other 2 days, the even numbers of our addresses could water. That's not a good place to be as a city councilor, and coming in and making sure that we had water going forward for our citizens. In after one dry summer, we seem to have a lot drier summers these days than we did 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and with a bigger population base as well. So that being said, I would love to get the Salmon River rights going, but what was told from us then, I don't know if it would be the same today. Some of these restrictions seem to have gotten bigger, but I'd love to have come back. I don't know how in the world June is a day that we could make a decision on. It's like buying a car, but tell me in 4 years what the price will be, my monthly payments. But I understand we cannot not have water in our city. I don't think that's any goal of here, but we've got to have something figured out. So anyways, my comments there. So.
Thank you. Carl.
Yeah, I'm going to try really hard not to duplicate what Jeremy just said, but just for the record, what Jeremy said. I think it's incomprehensible to me that we would not have an option that looks at wells or some other solution than using the city of Portland. I do not trust them. They have done all in the few decade or so that I've been here, they have mistreated us and raised some of the kinds of questions that I think that we're going to be having to deal with in the next 20 years, who's ever on the council. And for me, I don't want to repeat too much, but I don't know how Mike and Jordan, we got to the point where we're going to end up having to make a decision in 4 to 5 weeks, and we don't know almost anything. It just seems that we're really behind the 8 ball on this one. We got a month or so, but I would love to see the staff come up with why we couldn't, or maybe even how we can come up with some wells that might, or some other sources. Jeremy mentioned all of those water rights. Why we couldn't use some of that. I really am not very happy with the fact that we may end up being stuck with Portland water for the next, future time. So come up with some alternative to this Portland water fiasco.
Thank you, Carl. Don.
Hey, thanks. I'll echo Jeremy and Carl. Yes, I'm fully on board. And let's take it a step further. We're down to, between now and 2027, we got 5 years, 6 years to figure out what we're going to do here and have it hooked up and functional. That makes me very uncomfortable. So I think in addition to what they said, I think we need to really look at stopgap measure, meaning maybe we have to move forward with hooking up to Bull Run with a decision to, move ourselves away down the road, which means if that was if we have to do something, then as we go into negotiations and things, I would encourage staff to look for out clauses so that we can get out. and that whatever we're building gives us that optionality to add these other water sources in down the road. I think that's very important. And last staff consideration, I know it didn't seem to resonate with these guys, but the Portland Water Bureau isn't regulated. So there's a whole Oregon Public Utilities Commission that regulates almost everybody except small city municipalities like Portland, small city municipalities, right? So they really do run regulatory free, which is not a good spot for us to be. That said, I don't think we're an insignificant customer, and given that we're this late into the game, if we withdraw, it might affect their financials a bit enough, maybe enough to actually sit down and negotiate. So like I said before, in the utility industry, it's quite common for either the customer to pay the investment up front and then get credits on their service over 20 years, or the provider owns the line. I don't see, if Portland wants to service, then they can own the line. Even if we end up paying for it, let's get something for it. Let's get credits on our rates for the next 20 years. See if there's some negotiation, because we made that investment thinking it was a 70 or 80 year line, and it's not. So that's my advice.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I agree with all the sentiments, other than I do worry, Don, I could be wrong, but I do worry we're just not a big enough customer to make that impact. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're more right on that, because I obviously would like more negotiation leverage. I will say this. I haven't felt this way since I sat in that first wastewater presentation, where it feels like we haven't done our research. It feels, I'm going to swear, I guess, half-assed a little bit. It feels like we just kind of go, well, these are our options. This is kind of the easy way to do it. So let's go down this path. And it's not a good feeling as a counselor. And we had more time with wastewater. It's even worse of a feeling when you're told there's this June decision looming and we're sitting here on May 17th talking about it. And I think it becomes even more frustrating when, I was sitting there with Jeremy and Carl and Lori at a presentation, a year and a half ago, where we started saying, guys, we're worried about water. We don't want water to become like our wastewater treatment, where we're behind the game here. We're hearing a lot coming out of these CPOs and boring. It's starting to generate, news headlines. And we keep getting told by staff, don't worry about it. Like, don't worry about it. We got it. There's only so many options here. And now we're sitting here on May 17th with the decision looming in June. And I'm sorry, but it's not, that is not professional. And that is not meeting the expectations of this council from what we expect for the decision and oversight responsibility that we have for these decisions. It's just not. And we expect more. I can't speak for we, but I certainly expect more in the future. This is incredibly disappointing. With that, I will close this work session so we can get into our city council meeting. Let's plan on starting city council at 8:03. Give us 3 quick minutes. All right. Thank you. All right, well, seeing that it's now 8:03, I'm going to call this Sandy City Council meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Petzold.
Here.
Councilor Smallwood, I believe, is absent, excused.
Excused, yep.
Councilor Sheldon.
Here.
Councilor Walker. Is perhaps not
here yet, but please be prepared. Markers present.
Okay. Councilor Exner.
I am here.
Councilor Hokinson.
I am here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. Counselor Walker, we've marked you as present.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, with that, I'll start with a quick review of tonight's agenda. We will call for any changes to the agenda. We'll then go into public comment. That will be the time in which members of the public are welcome to provide public testimony to the council. Please note, though, that there are opportunities on the agenda for further testimony on House Bill 2001 amendments, as well as the Creekside Loop appeal later in the evening. We'll then go to proclamations for National Pollinator Week. We'll then go to presentations, which is my ability. I get to swear in 2 additional Sandy police officers. What an honor that will be tonight. We'll then go to our consent agenda, which has our city council minutes from April 29th. Under ordinances, we have a public hearing continued on that House Bill 2001. Resolutions is resolution 2021-11 on B City USA. Where you all get to hear me read I'm reading the proclamation earlier. Under new business, public hearing on land use appeal. That's that Creekside Loop Garage Setback Adjustment appeal. Then we'll have a report from our city manager. Then we'll have councilor and committee reports. And then we have an executive session to round up the evening. With that, are there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move forward into public comment. This is opportunity for members of the public to provide public comment to council. Again, please note, if you would like to provide comment on House Bill 2001 amendments, as well as the Creekside Loop appeal, there's opportunities to do that later this evening. So now is the time. If you're participating online, please click the raised hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. You'll have 5 minutes, as well as remember to state your name and address for the record. Jeff.
Okay, Mayor. And just to know, you would like 5 minutes at this meeting instead of.
I'm sorry, 3 minutes. Did I screw up? I'm sorry, 3 minutes.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just take a moment to look for any raised hands. And Mayor, I don't see any raised hands this evening.
All right, thank you. This is a part of the agenda for responses from staff to previous public comments. There is none from last week, unless any counselors have anything they want to respond to. Seeing none, we'll move ahead to proclamations. All right, let me pull that up here on my screen. All right, it's National Pollinator Week here in 2021. Whereas pollinator species, including thousands of species of bees, are essential partners in producing much of our food supply. And whereas pollinator species provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy and diverse ecosystems. And whereas pollination plays a vital role for the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities. And whereas the city of Sandy manages public lands that includes numerous public parks and wildlife habitats. And whereas the city of Sandy provides recommendations to developers and residents regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including the protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats. Now, therefore, I, Stan Pulliam, Mayor of the City of Sandy, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through the 22nd as Sandy's observance of National Pollinator Week, and call upon the people of Sandy to recognize this observance. And then, of course, Councilor Exner and I was able to do a video. I think that will be shared on our social media channel, which was a lot of fun. Councilor Exner, is there any words that you would like to say on this occasion?
A little short because I know we have a late start here, but I'm really happy to see some of this. This is part of the biodiversity that we set out as council goals, and I really think this is a good start on it. It's not the only thing that we should be doing, but certainly is a great addition to the city's philosophy and reputation. I will say that several of the school children in the Oregon Trail School District are excited about this and have planned to put together proposals that might be of interest to us in the future. So I look forward to working with the school teachers and the children that are students that are working with those teachers to find ways to make this even a better city and than it is already. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. With that, let's move forward into presentations. This is honestly my favorite part about being mayor. It's a true honor to be able to do this. We get to swear in two new Sandy police officers tonight. I see Chief Roberts. It looks like you're unmuted and queued up and ready to go.
I am. Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's really an honor to present the two new officers to all of you. I'm really looking forward to a time when you can meet them in person. Hopefully that'll be soon. I do have them ready. I'll bring them in, of course, separately. And I think we're gonna start with Officer Kristen Sabella. And then immediate family members with them. And
I can hardly hear Ernie. Is there any way he can turn up his mic?
Maybe stand closer to the microphone.
Okay, is that better?
That is better.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to get this set up so we could do it in this room on the smart board. But Counselor Walker, if you didn't hear any of that, I just was telling the council, okay, that it's my privilege to introduce the two new officers, and I'm hoping you can all meet them soon. And we'll start off with Officer Sabella, and I know that we're a little short on time tonight. Things have ran over, so Mayor, I'll let you get right to it. I will bring them in.
Okay. Hi, Kristen, can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hello. Well, this is an incredible honor for me. Thank you so much for agreeing for your service for our community and having your family there tonight. You all should be incredibly proud of your mom. I know we are. With that, Kristen, please hold up your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kristen Sabella, do solemnly swear.
I, Kristen Sabella, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon
and the laws therefore, and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of a police officer.
And I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of a police officer
during my continuance therein to the best of my ability.
During my continuance therein to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, they're prepping up there, Mayor. I can't hardly say thank you enough to the chief for us, the kind of people that he's getting. I'm really pleased that we have a lady policeman. Thank you, Chief. Good job.
Randall, welcome. Well, I want to start with thanking you for your service to our community. You know, as I mentioned earlier, this is an incredible honor for myself and for council to be able to do this. I know we all look forward to these evenings, and just thank you. All of you should be incredibly proud of your dad here this evening. I know we are. Randall, please lift your right hand and repeat after me. I, Randall Santos, do solemnly swear.
I, Randall Santos, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Oregon.
In the Constitution of the State of Oregon.
and the laws therefore,
and the laws therefore,
I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially discharge the duties of a police officer.
I will faithfully,
Honestly and impartially
honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties of a police officer
discharge the duties of a police officer
during my continuance therein
during my continuance therein
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Randall. It's a true honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it, sir.
You're very welcome, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time.
All right, everyone, we'll move ahead with our City Council agenda. Next up is our consent agenda with our City Council meeting minutes from April 19th, 2021. Unless there's discussion, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second? All right, I got a motion from Councilor Exner and a second from Councilor Hokinson to adopt the consent agenda. All those, please signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a thumbs down or a nay. Motion carries. Moving forward into ordinances, public hearing for HB 2021. Let me kind of pull up what I got here. All right, so there is again going to be an opportunity to offer public testimony that will occur after the staff report concludes. When the public testimony period does begin, everyone please do remember you can participate online by clicking the raised hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. Remember, this is a hearing that has been continued from the April 19th, 2021 council meeting. And the purpose of tonight's discussion is to gather further public input and consider ordinance adoption. With that, I will open our public hearing for land use file 20-032 DCA at 8:17 p.m. on May 17th. Are there any abstentions from the hearing body? Are there any conflicts of interest? Kelly, the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much for you tonight. I'm not going to do a presentation or anything. I just want to remind you in March and in April, we discussed this item twice, and we opened it to public comments at both of those meetings as well. So this is actually the third meeting that the City Council is seeing House Bill 2001 code amendments, and it also, I think, went before the Planning Commission at least once, maybe twice. So we've had a lot of opportunities for public comments locally. We also noticed that to DLCD, which is the state organization that oversees land use planning in Oregon, we made all of the proper notification requirements in the newspaper along the way, and we basically met all of the legislative requirements to adopt this ordinance. So before you tonight is the House Bill 2001 ordinance with all of the changes and track changes. These reflect all of the decisions that were made at the meeting in April. And with that, that concludes my summary.
All right, thank you, Kelly. With that, we will move to public testimony. Guidelines for those of you that wish to speak. Please do try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the body, they must be formally placed into the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, email your materials to recorder@ci.sandy.or.us, and staff will make sure your evidence is properly processed. To offer public testimony, a reminder that if you're participating online, please click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Testimony for this proposal will be 3 minutes. Please remember to state your name and mailing address for the record. Jeff will provide you with a 20-second warning. With that, let's do this. Let's open up for public testimony.
Mayor, because this is a legislative hearing, we're not required to break it up by the different.
Cool.
Okay, Mayor, so I'll just take a moment to look for any raised hands.
Just a reminder, raised hand button or *9 if you're participating via telephone.
Mayor, I don't see any raised hands.
All right, thank you, Jeff. With that, Kelly, staff recap.
Please adopt the House bill so that we can meet the state deadline of the end of June. Much appreciated with all your work on this, Council.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Kelly, to you and your staff, and it was a team effort. And the presentations got a lot more clear and concise as we went along, and you really took council direction well, and just really appreciate all the work that you guys put into this. With that, it looks like Kathleen, you haven't raised your hand, but you've unmuted, so I assume you want to go. You're up.
Well, I'm just trying to get clarification. Are we going to do this like we did this before or something? Because
I think the assumption was, and it may be a false assumption, Kathleen, but I think the assumption was we've gone through it a couple of times now. In our last meeting, councilors were able to kind of provide a thumbs up, thumbs down to weigh in on the issues individually, and staff was kind of prepared with a go for this meeting for an adoption.
And just for the clarification, is the adoption based on the straw poll comments, votes that we had before? That's what I'm trying to get clear on.
Okay, Kelly?
Correct. Yeah, as you'll see, the staff report, which I believe is page 37 of the 211 pages before you tonight, that actually goes through, in the middle of that first page, that goes through the different topics and gives the yes or no votes to the different topics that were discussed at the April 19th meeting. And then the code amendments reflect those votes that you guys did through your straw poll.
I would point out, includes all the straw votes. There's a few other administrative minor changes as well that are in there, but they're all in the red line.
Correct.
So with that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the DCA 20-032 DCA HB 2001 code amendments as currently drafted. Do we have to do a first reading?
Oh, with that, I will. With that, unless there's additional questions, I'll call for a first reading.
Okay, Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, this is Ordinance 2021-03, an ordinance amending certain chapters of Title 17 of the Sandy Municipal Code in compliance with Oregon House Bill 2001.
Okay, with that, is there a motion to adopt the first reading? Or discussion about the first reading?
Yes, I make a motion to adopt the first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion by Councilor Hokanson and a second by Council President Peetzold to adopt the first reading. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or provide me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a nay or a thumbs down. All right, Jeff, I will call on for a second reading.
I apologize for doing this, Mayor. One thing that occurs to me is we didn't have a motion to close the public hearing first. I'm not sure if that's important or not. Look to the city attorney.
Since it's not quasi-judicial, it's not critical, but it wouldn't be a bad idea.
I move that we close the public meeting.
And I'll second that.
There's a motion to close the public hearing by Councilor Hokanson, a second by Councilor Peetzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a nay or a thumbs down. All right, do we have to do the first reading again? No, okay. So then I'll call for a second reading.
Okay, this is Ordinance 2021-03, an ordinance amending certain chapters of Title 17 of the Sandy Municipal Code in compliance with Oregon House Bill 2001.
I'll move that we accept the second reading of this
Okay, see a motion by Counselor Exner to adopt the second reading. There's a second by Counselor Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye or provide me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a nay or a thumbs down. It's the worst, most thing ever just passed. We did it. We got through it. So congratulations to staff and council for all the work on this.
Thanks, council.
All right. Moving ahead. Sorry. All right. Public hearing on, oh, no, we're to the resolution. Resolution for B City USA. Is there a discussion or is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Mayor, would you like a brief staff report from Shelley on this, or you just want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't realize you were doing a report on this. Yeah, Shelley, please go.
No, that's fine. Everything's laid out in the written staff report. I'm not going to rehash too much, but this is a great opportunity for council to meet the biodiversity goal. Yeah, and Carl and I have been doing some work on this. We've been working with other community leaders and members of the Sandy community. Yeah, and I look forward to you guys passing it.
Shelley, did you want to play the video of me and Carl's for the rest of council?
Oh, it's still on my phone. I'd have to get it on my computer, but we'll put that up on Facebook.
All right. Kathleen, I see your hand up.
You know, I like the, the Pollinators Month and the resolution for Bee City USA stuff. But for me, I'm really about like, what are we actually going to do? Because all that kind of stuff is just, cool and groovy, but what are we actually doing? And when this came up before, I really wanted the staff to work and talk to the Parks Board, who is in charge, is kind of provides us advice and all that on most of the open parks and open space and natural areas that we have in the city. And so we can go ahead with these, resolutions and all that, but I guess it's all kind of fluff until you actually start doing things that are meaningful. And for me, I do want, this, I think it's important. And I think it's important that the Parks Board be the ones to kind of help drive this. Because
it's really easy for this to become kind of a, an in-name only kind of thing without any good work behind it. I have been talking to the Parks Board. For them, it's just a capacity issue of, since they're all volunteers, what they have time to work on. I am going to their meeting in June to talk more, to get a little bit more detail about what their participation could look like. But I agree with you that, participation from multiple organizations, multiple people is necessary.
Well, my feedback on that is, for the planning department to be kind of carrying the water on this, we've got all these amendments needed to the code, and that's really what I want to see the planning department focusing on, not on the bees and the pollinators. Not that they're not important, but I'm pretty, there's several counselors here who really feel strongly about getting these code updates done. So, bees and pollinators is really something that the community directors, community services, parks folks and all those should be the ones kind of carrying that water. I appreciate all you've done for it. It's a great thing. It's a white hat, but let's kind of really hope that it's actually the park staff and all that actually are the ones that kind of help, and the people and the Sarah to kind of help us make this a difference on the ground that we all want. So we have a collective goal for that, and I really want to see the people who are responsible for those things really making it happen. And I'm thrilled to see it happen, but I really want to see something on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Don, Counselor Oakenson.
Don's good. I answer that more often.
I come in and out of form all the time anymore.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, I just want to remind council that the resolution that's before us actually does call out a role for the Parks and Trails Advisory Board. It has several functions identified for them, I think covering what Kathleen was intending there. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this, scroll back up, resolution 2021-11.
I see a second. There's a motion by Counselor Hokinson and a second by Counselor Exner to adopt the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye or provide me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a nay or a thumbs down. Motion carries. All right, with that, I will now, we move forward into new business, open up a public hearing for appeal of land use file 20-049 ADJ. Instructions for the virtual public hearing here. There's an opportunity to offer public testimony after the applicant presentation concludes. Again, when the public testimony period begins, to speak, if you're participating online, click the raised hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. The speaker time limits will be up to 10 minutes for the applicant's presentation, up to 10 minutes for the appellant's presentation, up to 3 minutes for each audience member testifying in favor, against, or neutral, and up to 5 minutes for the applicant's rebuttal. I am now opening this hearing for State Land Use File 21-018 at 8:30 p.m. on May 17th. Any abstentions from the hearing body? Any conflicts of interest from the hearing body? I am now going to poll the hearing body for any ex parte contact, including any site visits.
Mayor, I visited the site.
All right, thank you. All right, are there any challenges to members of the hearing body? A reminder to bring a challenge. If you're participating online, click the raised hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. All right.
Mayor, I don't see any hands raised.
Seeing no challenges. If you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. Your comment should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by the close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Ready for the staff report. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see this. Let's see here.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem is all these like pop-up windows come out. Hold on 1 second. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to kind of go through these pretty quickly, and then I'll, in my recap after the applicant and the appellant have spoken and any public members, then I can kind of summarize it up and answer any questions that any of the council members might have. So this is for a duplex that's being proposed on Creekside Loop, which is just south of Tupper Road. As you'll see in this vicinity map, it's just a little bit south of downtown. So the duplex was approved in 2018. With those approvals for design review, it gives basically an applicant 2 years to file, and the applicant filed in October 2020 within the 2-year time period. As part of that design review process, the applicant at the time requested a type 1 adjustment and a type 2 adjustment. These adjustments were to reduce the garage setback, so the distance from the garage to their front property line. At the time, staff approved basically both to get a type 1 adjustment and denied the type 2 adjustment. So we approved both to be reduced from 20 feet to 18 feet. The applicant then submitted a revised site plan in compliance with the final order. As you can see, the original proposal was 18 feet, 2 inches on one unit and the other one was 17 feet 4 inches. Staff approved 18 feet 2 inches and 18 feet. And I think it shows it in this site plan here. And as you'll note on this site plan, these are the 2 duplex units, proposed unit A and proposed unit B. There's actually more distance than 18 feet 2 inches or 18 feet to the sidewalk, which is really the critical area, because that's the area where we don't want vehicles to overhang onto. Unit A has about 19 feet 7 inches, and unit B has, I think, approximately a little over 20 feet. As you'll also notice, and as you all know from going through all the House Bill 2001 code changes, is that in the very near future, as of June 16th, a duplex in Sandy will only be required to have 2 off-street parking spaces. This duplex that's being proposed by Mr. Newberry actually has 4 standard parking spaces, and then 2 that would be slightly smaller than standard. So they have the 2 units within the garage spaces. They have additional off-street parking spaces that are labeled on this plan as 9x18 off-street parking, which we typically don't see something like that with a duplex. And then he was also proposing the 2 other parking spaces in front of the garage doors, which are the subject matter tonight, basically the reduced area. This just kind of highlights a few things here, the setback. And then on this one, that was the original proposal. The approval right now is 18 feet, so it'd be 8 inches less to that front property line. So this just kind of highlights exactly what the decision was, which I've already summarized, so I won't really go into that again. The appellant before you tonight, Mr. Trimble, he appealed the decision on January 11th, so within the 12-day appeal period, to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission heard the appeal on March 29th and upheld the staff decision, so they basically denied the appeal. And we issued another final order from the Planning Commission shortly thereafter. Then on April 12th, 2021, Mr. Trimble appealed the Planning Commission decision. And he also listed a few other things that he would like the City Council to consider. I did want to point out that a few of the things that were listed by Mr. Trimble cannot be considered. There are access rights to Creekside Loop, and it's a public right-of-way, so there's no condition at this point that can be imposed to say that this lot has to take access from any other street. It's already has that approval from 2018. There was also never a reimbursement district created for Creekside Loop. There typically wouldn't be because it's a local street, so there's no reimbursements that can be granted to Mr. Trimble as part of this process either. The only thing that the decision space here tonight is for council to decide on the setbacks. Everything else is moot at this point. And so this just kind of lists the documents that staff would encourage the City Council to consider in addition to the public testimony. So there's, again, 2 final orders, one from staff, one from the Planning Commission. There's 2 appellant notices to appeal and the documentation from Mr. Trimble from both January and April. And then there's also the original submittal items from the applicant, Mr. Newberry. And staff's recommendation is to go with the Planning Commission decision, but we did want to just list the different, your decision space and what you could approve. You could deny both of the garage setbacks, as bullet point 2 says, and make them both adhere to the 20-foot minimum setback requirement to the garage door. Or, there's a host of different things you could do. These are just a few of them. I just wanted to bullet point it out for you. And with that pretty much concludes my presentation. As I said, if you have additional questions, you can ask them now, or we can just talk more after you hear from the appellant, the applicant, and the public. So with that, I'll be quiet for a little while.
Thank you, Kelly. I will now call for the applicant's presentation. Reminder, you have up to 10 minutes. Jeff will provide you with a 2-minute warning.
Thank you, Council. After following the Bull Run Water speech and then swearing in the police officers, this is kind of a mute subject after that. That was pretty powerful. But anyway, to what we're talking about here,
it really kind of boils down to the driveway issue on this duplex and parking. And like Kelly was saying, we provided parking alongside each side of the duplex, which is over 20 feet. And then the parking spaces inside the garages are 19'6". So they're just very, they're almost to the 20 feet mark. So that would have gave us 2 20-foot parking spaces for each duplex. With that, when we designed this, the parking spaces in front of the garages, our measurements when we applied for our type 1 and type 2 variances, we went to our property line, not the sidewalk. And there's a distance in between our property line and the sidewalk. So the concern is cars hanging out into the sidewalks. So the measurements kind of read with building A, if you look at our distance to the sidewalk, it would be 19'6" from the face of our building to the sidewalk. But then also, the garage door actually recesses into the building another 7 inches. So we actually have 20 feet 1 inches. So that fits the 20-foot criteria when it's all built. But we wanted to leave a little room for movement there. But building B, where we've asked for the 17'4" distance, which was the type 2. That actually reads, because the grass strip, as the road bends, there's a grass strip in between my property and the sidewalk, and it gets much larger. So we would actually have, from the side of our building to the sidewalk, 20 feet 9 inches, and then add another 7 inches to that for the garage door inset into the building. So if we're really getting down to the brass tacks of, are we hanging out into the sidewalk? I don't think so. With the 2 parking spots on the side of the building, which are much larger than 20 feet, and then the parking spaces in front of the garage. So I would still like to file for the type 1 variances, just to make sure. But I think I'm providing plenty of parking. Where we've got 3 parking spots per side, and that's more than anybody else around. So these are very livable units. They're very good-looking units. They will provide good living for the tenants that are going to be staying there. So I've really, a lot of thought has been put into these structures. And that's what I've got for you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the presentation this evening. With that, I will now call for the applicant's presentation. A reminder, you have up to 10 minutes, and Jeff will provide you with a 2-minute warning. Welcome, Mr. Trimble.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you for your time, Council. I wanted to thank the Council for originally working with me to make this project happen. It's been described as a gift, but I would point out that we paid tens of thousands of dollars to complete the development that came from Tupper to our property. But I want to thank the Council for working with me. Mr. Newberry's tax lot 9008 was originally created with access off Tupper and is platted with Tupper access. Substantial change to the plat should trigger a replat process subject to public review that was not done. This current design has questionable rear yard setbacks, hence the insufficient garage setback. Bill King, when he was mayor, asked in a council meeting, why does the city have so many legal issues? I would suggest to the council that this exemplifies why. This could be considerably more palatable with some preliminary discussion with the people that paid the bills, perhaps some offer of reimbursement. We spend hundreds of hours with permits and engineering, let alone construction. A joint permit with DSL and the Corps of Engineers to put a grossly oversized culvert in No Name Creek is an example of the amount of work that went into just getting into my property. The traffic and parking, which is the subject of this review, currently we only have 6 of 15 duplexes constructed, and it is all parking and access off of Tupper is already an issue. Removing parking and adding traffic will further exacerbate these issues. We built and designed Creekside Loop for the 2 projects that it currently serves. So why deviate from the original platted Tupper access? Since you said we needed to mention any issues that might come up, we also have an easement for the existing fence by prescription, and we should be reimbursed by the legal theory of quantum merit. Thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. With that, we will now move to the public testimony portion of the hearing. Please do try to avoid repetition as someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that is all you say. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the body, they must formally be placed into the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, email your materials to recorder@ci.sandy.or.us, and staff will make sure your evidence is properly processed. Testimony for this public hearing will be called for in 3 groups: testimony in favor of the proposal, testimony opposed to the proposal, and neutral testimony. If you're participating online, reminder to click the raised hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. I will now call for testimony in favor of the applicant's proposal. A reminder to state your name and mailing address for the record. You'll have up to 3 minutes, and Jeff will provide you with a 20-second warning. Now would be the time to raise your hand.
Okay, Mayor, just take a look. And Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay. I will now call for testimony against the applicant's proposal. A reminder to state your name and mailing address for the record. You'll have up to 3 minutes, and Jeff will provide that 20-second warning.
And Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
All right, I'm now calling for neutral testimony. These are general comments, neither for nor against the proposal. A reminder to state your name and mailing address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes, and I'm pretty sure Jeff's still willing to provide you that 20-second warning.
And Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
All right, Kelly, you're up again. Staff recap and recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think the information that was provided by the applicant or the appellant would change the recommendation that staff would give to the council, which is just to stay with the planning commission decision. They looked at this in pretty good detail and came to that conclusion similar to staff. So it's not like it was just staff making a decision and that being final. It was heard through an appeal to the planning commission, and they voted unanimously to uphold the staff decision. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Is there any questions for staff before we go to the applicant's rebuttal? Councilor Walker.
Kelly, thanks for the good staff work and the report. It talks about the 18 in 8 on like property A, proposed unit A, 18 feet 2-inch proposed setback to property line. And so that's the property line. And so what's appears to me that I didn't understand is that the other option is 19 feet 6 3/4 inches setback to the sidewalk, which appears to be beyond the property line. So it appears like if we give a variance that we are giving away land beyond their property line. Is that accurate?
I mean, I get where you're coming from on that, Councilor Walker. All that you would basically be doing is, instead of that first number being at 20 feet from the face of the garage to the property line, it would be at 18 feet 2 inches. So I don't think we're giving anything away, but you know, there is the potential that if it's a large vehicle parked there, that there's a slightly higher potential of it hanging over onto the sidewalk. However, as all of you I'm sure are aware, is even with our standard 20 feet, if you have a large vehicle, it's hanging into the sidewalk irregardless. And that's why we went to 22 feet about right when I started working here in a lot of our zones, is because of, you know, the F-250s and stuff that block the sidewalks everywhere.
Yeah, I testified about that and tired of walking my baby stroller out into the street around all the trucks. And that's how that got changed. But my question, I guess, I don't think I got it answered. So the property line is basically on proposed unit A, 18 feet 2 inches away from the garage. And so there's another 1.5 feet or so, 1 foot and 4 inches beyond that, that's between the sidewalk and the property line, right?
Correct.
To that. And so that property doesn't belong to the property owner, correct?
And it still wouldn't with the adjustment. The only thing is that the garage is a little bit closer to the front property line than 20 feet. It doesn't change any rights that the city owns of the right of way.
I'm just confused. If you give the variance, then it appears like you're giving the property away, but.
What? No.
Okay.
That would not be the case. No. No, if that was the case, I would never recommend that.
Councilor Hokanson.
Thanks. Hey, Kelly, Mr. Trumbull, he mentioned quantum merit, a principle that I had to look up to figure out what that meant. And can you tell me whether that was towards the city? Does the city have a potential liability here? Or was that something between Mr. Trumbull and the applicant?
I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one. I have no idea what he's talking about, so I'd have to have Mr. Crean answer that.
I also am not clear on what he's talking about, but I don't see any liability for the city under any scenario presented by this permit.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Sheldon.
Yeah, the other thing he mentioned, Kelly, is he mentioned it requires a replot. Is that something that we normally do? That's a new term for me, so I just wanted to see, because it sounds to me like something like how we would go rezone something. Is that a similar thing to where we would replot it so it looks different?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilor Sheldon. So a replat is just when you plat a property through a partition process. So when you turn like one lot into two or two lots into three, that's a partition. All a replat is the term of then taking that old partition and then changing the lot lines again, or changing some of the conditions on that old plat map. That's all it really is. His reference is that, and Mr. Trimble's correct, is when that property was originally created, it was created through a partition and it had access up to Tupper Road. The part that Mr. Trimble did not tell you is that when that happened, Creekside Loop wasn't even a right-of-way yet. So it would have been impossible for this lot to have access to Creekside Loop because there was no road. So it doesn't take a replat to get new access rights to a new road that's been put in. And that's all that's happened here, is that originally Tupper Road was where this lot would have gained access because that was the only right-of-way that it could gain access to. Since then, Creekside Loop was developed and dedicated to the city, and it abuts this property, and therefore, you know, when the Public Works Director, Mr. Walker, and I reviewed this proposal, we didn't see any reason why it couldn't take access to a different public road. It's actually even a better access because it's a lower street classification. Tupper Road's actually, I believe, a collector, which we like to limit the amount of accesses onto, and Creekside Loop's a local street. So by code definition, our code would actually prefer access to Creekside Loop. And I'm sure Mr. Peetzold or Mr. Exner could testify to that with their time on Planning Commission.
All right, you guys, you ready to go to the applicant's 5 minutes? Oh, I'm sorry, Rich, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. All right, let's go to the 5-minute rebuttal by the applicant. Reminder that Jeff will provide you a 2-minute warning. Mr. Newberry.
Okay, thank you. So I want to address the question about the city giving me that 1.5 foot piece of ground. It's not. It's every driveway's that way. So where the driveway goes through the sidewalk and from the street and enters onto private property, there's a section of public property there that's 1.5 foot, and it always stays public property. But you have to cross it to get into every single house. So unless your property line is right abutted to the sidewalk. But other than that, I really don't have anything to say. You've got my numbers on the dimensions of my driveways and parking spaces. And we put our big truck parking alongside the duplexes on each side so we can keep those from hanging out there. And yeah, that's it. That's the best I can do.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. With that, are there more questions from council before we close the public hearing? All right, seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
For a second. All right, there's a motion by Councilor Peetzold, a second by Councilor Walker to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, nay, or a thumbs down. Motion carries. So with that, we are to the discussion part. Discussion by the hearing body. Councilor Peetzold.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I mean, I really like the fact that we have extra spots and have thought out extra parking, as we've talked about that being an issue. And so having that on the site, a few inches here to gain whole additional parking spots, I think is beneficial to the residents, beneficial to the city as well. So I think that there isn't enough parking, and so for him to have that on there is very appealing for this, as well as things that are coming down the pike with duplexes going forward as well. I think that we should approve this.
Thank you, Councilor Exner.
Just want to clarify this from Kelly, but it looks to me like this variance we're talking about on A is a variance of 1 foot 10 inches and to the property line. And the other B is 1 foot 4 inches to about 2 feet 8 inches on number B. If that's right, that's what the variance is asking for, correct?
The first one was correct, 1 foot 10 inches. The second one, I actually denied, and I reduced it from 2 feet 8 inches to 2 feet. So I only approved it at 18 feet. And Mr. Newberry was fine with that. He didn't appeal my decision. It was Mr. Trimble that did. So yeah, it's 18 feet 2 inches and 18 feet.
Okay, so I guess my opinion is this is pretty insignificant. I know that we've got a lot of F-230s, 250s, 310s, whatever those are. But we also have a lot of smaller cars, and that I think it wouldn't be too unreasonable to think that there'll be some smaller cars in there, as well as possibility of bigger cars. As far as this location, I like the idea that we've got 2 parking spaces where we wouldn't have had if we wait another month before the 2001 is accepted in code for our own city. So I think this is pretty insignificant.
All right, Councilor Hokanson.
Thanks. I just want to say I feel for Mr. Trumbull and for that, you know, that concern about having made an investment and paid for infrastructure and other things that may not be fairly shared with later residents. However, not seeing any contractual or legal obligation thereby, I feel no inclination to reverse things, and it feels like the staff and the planning commission have done their job.
All right. Councillor Walker.
Can I make a motion?
Absolutely. You know I love those.
I make a motion that we uphold the staff and planning commission decision to approve a type 1 adjustment to the garage setback for both units of the duplex per the final order for file number 20-049 ADJ dated December 30th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion by Councillor Walker, a second by Councillor Peetzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye or give me a thumbs up. Aye. Opposed, a nay or a thumbs down. Motion carries. All right, great work, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, to you and your team. All right, with that, report from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. First, with the good news, the mayor identified June 21st for returning to our council meetings in person. I think I've heard from a lot of you on making those arrangements. As I said in the email, we're happy to accommodate both. I think we have a good solution that we're testing out, that we can continue with the virtual meetings and have that option for the public as well to continue with Zoom, and then have the cameras and computers set up in the council chambers so everybody can, council members and staff can participate in person again. So we're excited about that, seeing everybody again. I think almost everyone on June 21st.
Jordan, some for the first time. This council has not met in chambers yet.
That's right. Not even on tours.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll turn up the heat and get a little cold in there. Actually, it's summertime, so we'll turn up the AC. So we'll see everybody there on the 21st. We have a few meetings before then. I think on June 7th, we'll bring back more information on the water supply. I wrote down some notes. So we'll bring up some of those old reports and have a chance for more discussion and study of those issues before having that decision in front of you guys on the 21st. A couple other things. We have a survey that's currently out. I think we've been bugging you about regarding some code options and things to consider with the Planning Commission. There's a joint meeting as a work session on June 7th with the Planning Commission, where the council will be talking with the Planning Commission about the draft Parks and Trails master plan, and then these other code changes and other code related issues you'd like to talk with the Planning Commission about for staff to kind of focus on over the next year with code updates. We have the government relations interviews coming up this week. Thanks to Jeff for coordinating that. We have a couple firms that we will be interviewing, and I think we pinned down a date for that. So excited about getting that done this week. Speaking of interviews, I think there's a lot of interviews coming up for all these board and commission vacancies. So sorry about the hit to the schedules, but those are some important community engagement bodies that we'd like to get filled, especially a couple of new ones like the Public Arts Advisory Board and the Pool Exploratory Task Force that have some applicants to review and interview. And then the community meeting, I think you've seen the flyer that we sent around last week for a save the date for residents and neighbors around Roslyn Lake and the proposed outfall, treated water outfall at Revenue Bridge and the Bull Run CPO. So we're working with Trackers Earth on a community meeting to talk about the project and what the proposal is and all the data, and kind of go over that with them on the evening of the 25th. Councilors are of course invited. It's an informational session, Q&A, So you're invited. So we've sent that around, and more details will be coming. They're working with Tony and Checkers Earth and Molly with Checkers Earth on the logistics and details of doing an outdoor meeting in May, which this last week was great, but it's raining now. So I want to make sure that we can have that out there and have a good meeting. So I think that's all from me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate that report. All right, counselor and committee reports. Is Rich still here? Yeah, there he is. Sorry, I lost you there, Rich. Hey, you're first.
I don't really have anything to report. Looking forward to this session coming up. One thing I will say is I'm a little bit perturbed by the email asking for the feedback. I understand staff's busy in that, but I also want to be able to have open conversations in this kind of a forum, and I think that's where they belong. I'm curious to see what staff has as far as the codes that need to be changed, and then we can discuss that further. I think council's job is to provide the direction and say what we kind of want, which I can speak for myself. I think I've made that plenty clear. But moving forward, I'm really curious to hear what staff has to say and not frankly do their job. So I will not be answering that email. I look forward to having the conversation, and I will openly have it here. But I don't want to see emails like that. I think this is the forum we need to have it, not email. I think it's the crutch that we rely too much on, and that's just moving forward. I think we need to have open discussions. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Carl, Counselor X. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw your hand up. Go up, Jordan. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Counselor Sheldon. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a conversation at goal setting about how we can kind of generate some topics going into this joint meeting with Planning Commission. And I know it seems like there's a lot of information in there, and a lot of that has to do with just the code areas that staff has identified of here's some things that is on our list to talk about. And then we just left it open-ended if there's any others, because we know like the plan developments and things like that we want to talk about. But if there's any other topics that we should put on that agenda, that was just the intent, is to just kind of have a brainstorming session before to it.
And that's fine, but I personally think that what I don't like about email is I'm a big transparency fan, and I really like the fact that right now, if somebody wants to know what I'm saying, they can log onto their computer and hear what I have to say. And quite frankly, in order to get my emails back, you got to make a public records request. There's potential cost to that to the citizen, and I don't like that. And maybe I'm the only one with that stance. I don't know, but I believe that we have this forum, and that's what it's for. And I understand what you're saying, and I understand the saving time piece, but I really want to make sure that the information that's out via email is shared publicly, and it's just not done. It causes citizens a challenge to get that information, and it's a barrier I don't think should be there. So that's just my opinion. Like I said, I may be the only one of 7 with that, but that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Counselor Exner.
Yeah, three items here. As of Friday evening, when I looked, I didn't see, and I think there was some shortage on the art committee applications. Are we still short? I didn't get a chance to talk to Jeff today, but are we still short, and by how many on the art committee?
We received 4 applications as of Friday afternoon.
No, hasn't much changed that way. So the deadline was Friday, so I'm not sure how we can move forward with it. I suppose we can go ahead and do the interviews, but it just concerns me that we don't have enough to fill all 7 seats. We'll probably have to go with shortage, I suppose. I don't know, do we think we could extend the time and do some recruitment, or just leave it as 4 if we accept those 4? What's the?
I think it's difficult. Not an odd number poses a challenge with a majority rule on any sort of decision making that they want to go about. I'll let Jeff jump into if he wants to talk about the recruitment process at all, but it was advertised in the same location in the same manner that all the other advisory boards have been advertised in, which got quite a bit more applicants than 4. So I think it might just be perhaps an interest issue with this one at this point in time.
Okay.
I would just add on top of that, it's incumbent on all of us as counselors, and me included as mayor, to use our social media channels and our bully pulpit and our microphones and stuff to be able to promote these opportunities for our community members as well when we have these, low applicants.
Maybe there's a way that we can.
It was in the newsletter. We put it on our social channels. It was up on our website, featured in the spotlight. And yeah, we certainly received a lot of applications for the pool committee, and some, less for some others. But so just to give a recap of that, you're correct, Mayor. Yep.
All right, I won't leave that one go for the moment. Just as a notice, I attended a couple of meetings. Both of them were spontaneous. That had some discussions about the wastewater treatment outflow going out towards the Roslyn Lake this past couple of weeks. I'm going to submit notes from those things as part of the public involvement that's going on there. There certainly is a lot of interest there. One of the meetings that I attended was a meeting of a bunch of old retired folks that are kind of like me, have lots of interest on the Sandy River, and happen to be some connections in my past. And when the subject came up, boy, it was plenty of interest there. So I know there's a lot of interest for this 25th meeting coming up. I look forward to being there. I will be there. There is a couple things I really like a lot. I looked at that weeding that was going on with the islands and coming into Sandy. I appreciate staff being able to get that stuff done. It looks so much better than those tall weeds that were there. Great. Appreciate the work. As well as I'm seeing the white paint around some of these mud holes that are coming up out of our pavement. I appreciate that. I think that's really is needed. I know that that's something that when I was in road management in the Forest Service, that was something that you see mud coming up through the pavement, and that's indication of some problems, maybe even some bigger problems that we're not going to be wanting to see some of the maintenance costs on. So appreciate getting that stuff done. Look forward to seeing those all completed this upcoming year. And then finally, I have a project that I brought up a year ago, but because of all kinds of things, I've let slide. But there is a piece of sidewalk that really does need to be looked at, evaluated, and I think prioritized on Sandy Heights Road, where one of the apartment developments, not by the development itself, but because a piece of property just to the west of it never has had a piece of sidewalk. We really need to be looking at the possibility of getting it looked at to be sidewalked, concreted in. There's lots of children issues, there's walking issues, and some access things. I'd like to put that onto either a workshop of some kind in the future, or some sort of conversation for the council to move forward on it. Or I'm looking for a process, I guess, rather than just having it slide on and on for years. So if there's something we can do tonight, great. If not, a conversation between the right parties between now and the next meeting. Not hearing a subject, so I will be in touch with Jordan and the mayor pretty quick here to get that put someplace. And with that, I'm done.
All right, thank you, sir. Councillor Walker.
I kind of echo some of the comments that Rich had about what code needs to be changed. My understanding is that the planning staff in the past has been keeping a bin list of the code that needed to be changed. Because a lot of times when I have suggested a change to the code, they said, oh yeah, we've got a running list and we'll just add that to list, but we're not going to get to it now. I've kind of been put off because they were kind of wanting to take it all, together. And I'm still waiting on that. But obviously, the need to have the proposed clear and objective code issues on there. I don't know what all those are. I'm assuming that the planning staff knows what those are, or our lawyer knows what those are. Those should be the things that are really, for the staff work that I'm looking for, it's like list those codes that needs to be changed to meet the clear and objective, and and I know that DLC or whoever they are have kind of best management practices and sample codes for addressing the clear and objective criteria. So, I think that that's the kind of staff work I'm looking for is, here's the problem codes that we have that aren't meeting the need, the intent and the legal criteria and all that. And here's the proposed code that we're looking for. I'm not able to, I don't think any of us are planners, nor do we have the time to go through the hundreds of pages of codes. When I kind of pushed back on this a little bit, I was told, well, I know the code better than most of you. And I'm sure I do. Because I've been on the other end of the appeals and everything else. But again, it's not my job to do that. And I really want to see I really want to kind of see the staff really, I want to see their bin list. I want to see the proposed, changes that David and the DLC folks have already kind of, proposed. So that's kind of where I'm coming with that. I want to be helpful. I want to be, I might have some ideas about it, but it really is, I don't have the time to go through the hundreds of pages of code to determine which ones I have a problem with. So that's kind of where I'd like to see that go more, is for us to be more responsive rather than coming up with all the guts that need to be changed. I don't need to know how the sausage is totally made. I do know that there was, some problems that y'all are aware of. There was some challenge that I was told about the parks code and whether or not, I remember a quote, I will quote it. It is, at the city's discretion, it is, the city's decision as to whether or not we dedicate land or take fee in lieu of. And I was told, that there might be an issue with that or something. And that's the one where, if there's an issue, let's hear what it is. Let's hear what the proposed language is. But I want to make sure that our code language is defensible and that it allows our city to implement our new Parks and Master Plan that we hopefully adopt. I do have some questions about the community center, and I'm just curious if the community center is going to open, and if so, when, and are there any plans for summer camps or summer programs for kids? It's kind of almost the end of May, and I don't know, if those are totally off the docket, then it's just helpful to kind of let folks know. Is there any programs that could be happening outside to have a COVID-safe approach? I'm sure all our families that do have small kids are looking at some kind of options for, trying to kind of get their kids outside. I'm concerned that, folks are trying to make plans already, and it's already, the end of May, and they're asking on Facebook, are there any summer camps available? They're asking about the thing down at Roslyn Lake, Tony's program and things like that. So again, I think that we could be more, more helpful at trying to kind of identify opportunities. The last thing I'm going to kind of focus on is code enforcement. And I'm continuing, I know you all, we all walk around the city, and I'm continuing to see vehicles that do not run and have not run for years and that have not been dealt with at all. And one only needs to go on Google Earth and look at, you can scroll on the years as to what, how old the picture is on Google Earth. And you can go back 4 years and see these vehicles that have not moved in 4 years. And so this is not, I don't think I'm being unreasonable to say, we seem to have a bit of inequality in how we deal with code enforcement with some of these issues. So I really would like us to see, I've had issues with it with, where I know that I've heard that the code stuff is based on complaints, but I really do think that, it shouldn't have to be. A lot of neighbors don't want to, rat out their neighbors or anything like that, or they're honestly, some people have told me they're afraid to kind of do that because some of their neighbors aren't, they're worried their neighbors will find out that they were complaining about some situation. So I really think it is important for us to, ensure that our staff are doing code enforcement. And some of this stuff, like I said, you don't even have to get out of your car. You can drive by and see these things. It's not anything that takes a lot of investigation. So I really would like to see us step up on the code enforcement and take care of these kind of multi-year issues. There's some houses that have, debris in the front yard that it's been there, and it's, they've been cited or they've been warned and warned and warned. And I love the idea of doing carrots, but at some point we got to get a stick and issue a citation. And I think in my, what I've seen is that when a citation was issued, the things got cleaned up pretty quick. But then, weeks later, it's back to looking bad again. So really step up our code enforcement to try to kind of help take care of some of these years-long issues on some streets. And if you want details, I can tell you, areas that I've seen where, just walking around where they've been there for years. So, all right. And everything else, I think, I'm glad to hear us coming back into in-person meetings. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the Parks and Trails Master Plan. They've been making presentations to the Parks Board that have been real. In fact, the Parks Board, I'll kind of speak on behalf of Lori here. They actually adopted the Parks Master Plan, recommended, not adopted, they recommended to the council adoption of the Parks Master Plan. So that was kind of exciting. They had comments, I think, had to do with like there should be more, or they wanted to see ball fields, ball sport courts and things like that, because their community park is one of the priorities listed in there, and they want to see that community park be sure to have some ball fields and things. And that was a need identified in our last plan. So we really want to, that was the recommendation they made, that we as the council adopt that plan and focus a little bit on the community park with sports fields. So exciting. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Hokanson.
Thanks. Oh man, there go my notes. All 40 pages of them. Sorry. It's kind of cool to go like fourth or fifth because you get more time to think about things. So let me just echo a few things. First off, Jeff, I love the write-ups and things for these motions, but when we get into these land use or these appeals where there's a very rigid structure, I'd love to see the end of it where it's what motions need to be done in what order, so we don't forget, close the hearing, do this, do that. It would help me as a counselor to know what I'm supposed to be making a motion on. Does that make sense? The more complicated ones?
Yeah, it does. There's a script that we create and we provide it for the mayor. And I'm not sure if you're asking for that level of specificity, but we can certainly make sure that the motion text is
At
clear.
the bottom, we have staff recommendation. On simple motions, we have the actual motion written out, right?
Okay.
But we don't have it for the complicated ones where there's 3 or 4 motions in a row that have to be made. So it would just help me. I feel like I'm still trying to figure stuff out.
Appreciate that feedback, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Second of all, man, we got a ton of people on that pool task force that applied, so that's great. Maybe if, Carl will send those that we don't like over your way. But actually, I felt a little guilty because when the mayor said we need to use our social media, I realized I didn't advertise for the Arts Committee because that's not my committee, and that was my mistake. So I encourage all of you to reach out to me if you wish, and I'm happy to advertise on your behalf for whatever you're trying to promote. We'll use our networks however we can. Second of all, I don't even remember what that one said, so we can skip that one. Oh, taking a play from Carl's thing, I've noticed signage and the mayor, getting those left turns, allowed signs, but we have a couple other problem areas in town, and one of them I'd like our staff take a look at is the Reuben Lane in 26. There are 2 green lights that are protected. There's no signage that indicates it's protected on, the northbound or protected on the southbound left turn. And so it creates some confusion. And I think I don't know if we own it or ODOT does, but I think it needs to be clarified. I also like to piggyback off Carl's sidewalk thing. We have upcoming street conversation work session coming up. I think sidewalk continuation would be a perfect topic to be added to a discussion on streets, so streets and sidewalks. And it should be an inventory that we should be able to track and see how well we're closing that out. And last, piggybacking off Kathleen and talking about the code and what code should we be interested in, there were several talks, staff talked to us about, do we want to remove the plan development section until we figure it out? I would love to see that come up for an actual discussion as a proposal. You know, we can always say no, but I mean, by staff proposing it, putting it on the agenda, we can have that discussion and decide whether we want to continue the status quo or change it. And lastly, on the code enforcement, I echo what Kathleen said about that too. We do have a lot of problems. I have a card, mine is cul-de-sac, hasn't moved in years. Neighbor, I'm not going to rat them out, but somebody probably ought to give them a warning and I'll help them move it if they need it. In regards to houses and derelict houses and properties, oftentimes we have older people who may not be able to do things. I would just encourage staff to be aware of the service opportunities for either church groups or scouts or others to come in and help in those situations. So we can use code enforcement to identify a problem spot, and then we can use our service and other opportunities to leverage the right community resources to make a difference. And with that, I just want to say I'm sorry for being maybe a little too out there in our budget sessions. I do it from a good spot, but that doesn't mean it comes across like it ought to. So I am passionate, but I do enjoy working with you guys. And even when I disagree, I'm in this for the long game. So thank you.
Well, Counselor, my personality never sways, so I can't understand that at all. Kidding, of course. No, you're great, sir. Counselor Pietzel.
Yeah, I have nothing to report on, so we'll make it quick and go on to the next thing.
Thank you, sir. Quick report for me. One is return to person city council meetings, June 21st. Very excited for that. Please do communicate with staff if you have any reservations or anything for your personal health situation or circumstances. I'm talking to counselors as well as our city employees and staff. Please do be communicating those. I know that Jeff and Jordan are working hard to be able to accommodate and to be able to kind of have a little bit of a virtual meets in person if that's what we need to do. Plus, I think we've learned a lot with technology, right, over the last year and a half. And I think there's a lot of opportunities using mediums like what we're on here tonight to continue to allow our neighbors to get involved in our meetings. We've finally wrapped up the budget meetings. We got another hurdle at the council level with that, but I did want to thank staff, Tyler, you especially, and of course all of our department heads who participated in that process, our budget committee volunteers, and all of you counselors. I know we spent a good amount of time doing that, but I think we came away with a really good budget, some good recommendations that our council will be dealing with here in the weeks ahead. So thank you everybody for that. And then with that, just wanted to thank Shelley for your work on the Bee City and Pollinator Week. Thank you for meeting with Carl and I out there to film that video. That was a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing that. And with that, that's my report for tonight. Oh, I see a hand up from Rich before we adjourn.
Hey, I want to take a quick moment and apologize to Jordan. I think I probably came off a little harsher than I intended. Kathleen and Don, I guess great minds think alike. But with all seriousness, I think they put it much more articulate. I'm super frustrated. I feel like we've been beating a drum for a while and it's just now starting to come to light. And I don't feel like I have anything more to offer on a Survey Monkey that hasn't already been put out in this forum. So my apologies if that came across really abrasive or rough. I didn't mean for it like that. A little bit of frustration, but that they did a much better job of articulating what I was trying to say. So sorry about that if it came across.
No apology necessary. No, totally get it.
We're a family here. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Remember to stick around for our executive session.